Good evening, model railroaders, and welcome back to the Second Section podcast, where it's just regular folks talking about model railroading. I am your host, Andy Dorsch, and off in a distant galaxy is my co-host, Mike Ostertag. Mike, how you doing this evening?
Good. How are you?
What are you looking at over there?
What do you think?
Yeah, you get just like my son. Pay
What?
attention. Over here.
I'm paying attention. I just turned it on.
Oh man. Well, how you been?
Good. Been doing a lot of thinking, which is never a good thing usually.
No.
But this time I think it is. So, and I have the two people that are our guests to blame for all my thoughts. So
I think we should introduce those guests, shouldn't we?
I think we should too, because the quicker I get to the blame game, the quicker we can get this all started.
That sounds good. So tonight we have with us on the Second Section podcast, we have Thomas Clamoski. Welcome back, Thomas. You are a five-timer here at the Second Section podcast tonight. Is that right?
That is correct. And I'm honored to be here again.
Well, I think we have to put this up, and of course we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put some applause to that. So congratulations.
You just couldn't wait to use the new toy, could you?
I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait.
Does he get does he get the robe like they get on SNL?
So that's the next step. Spoof has been for the last 3 years now. Anyone that is supposed to get a smoking jacket.
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't been able to put that to production just yet. But
technically, it's actually a jacket that's on fire. But I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
But welcome back, Mr. Klamoski. It's always good to have you here. It's always a great show when you're here, and I guess I just want to thank you for all the pre-show prep this week. First and foremost, I know you did a lot of work behind the scenes to make tonight happen. So thank you so much.
No problem. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed being here. You guys are great.
And then we also have another Tom with us, Mr. Tom Johnson. How are you?
Well, as a fellow colleague of mine that used to teach down the hallway from my room, everything is copacetic.
There you go.
Whatever that means.
That's awesome. That's great.
I can say peachy.
So Tom's. This is your second, maybe third time.
I think I'm a two-timer.
You're a two-timer, so you'll have to make sure you get back 3 more times to get that free meatball sub.
Yeah.
That we're doing here. But we have a great show tonight. So what are we talking about this evening? What is the topic? I guess we said simplify, right? That's the big theme.
Right. On my part, I'm going to talk about simplifying a part of my railroad. And it's mostly the right side of my layout, which you will see when we look at the track plans. The center section and the left section, where my Farm Bureau Co-op elevator is, they didn't change too much. I might have changed a grain bin or something like that here and there, and some details, but most of the changes went on the other side, down by the door where you exit my room.
Mm-hmm.
And I just basically simplified it, opened it up so I would have more negative space. And I had to remove an elevator, relocate another, and all that neat stuff. And then I extended my layout with what I call a phase 1 extension, where I made a new interchange. And then shortly after that, I decided this isn't working for me. So I planned a phase B and extended it on down in front of the closet. And I have a hidden staging there now. And it's a double staging. I could go in from one side that represents Logansport, the south side of Logansport and Conrail Yard, or I could go in it from the right side, and that would represent the interchange at Lucerne. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And Tom, you're next.
Yeah, what are you going to talk about, Tom Klamoski?
I got I've had my land up for almost 13 years now, and I've found some things I liked and some things I don't like, and it's time for a change. So I'm going to be doing away with are ending the Georgia Northeastern and starting a new layout here sometime this year. I've got a couple of things I'm holding off on, but I've got a couple of visitors that want to see the Georgia Northeastern before it goes away.
Sure.
I'm trying to hold off on doing that. But yeah, there's hopefully some of the lessons that I learned I can pass on, and what I thought worked maybe didn't work as well as I thought. And maybe Michael get some of this out of it.
Yeah.
I just want to let it be known. I said nothing about a switchback. Not one thing. I have gotten over the switchback. I am absolutely over the fact that he eliminated or like refused to model a key portion of the railroad. I understand, but no, seriously, it's going to be sad to see that Georgia Northeastern go away because you did such a great job with it. It was so cool,
Yeah.
I mean,
time for a little something different, and a small layout, so I don't feel so bad about tearing the other one down and starting a new one, and do something a little bit different.
Change can be good. Change can be really good.
Yeah, I agree. So I can't wait to. So I got a little taste of what you guys are about to see this evening in the section crew when we did our pre-show run through, and I gotta say, I love and I hate having these two gentlemen on the show because now, since our last conversation all together, Mike and I have been in a flurry of, oh, we should do this. Oh, we should do this. Oh, we should do this. So it has inspired us to think about our railroads a little differently, as well as I'm sure it's going to inspire you guys as well. So, little admin note for the folks out in the section crew this evening. Tonight, ping us with questions, comments, and all sorts of good stuff for Tom and Tom. I'll make sure to get those up on the screen. Just remember to keep them model railroad related and PC and civil. We don't want the moderators in the chat tonight to have to do anything and kick you out of here of this good time and give you the stanky boot. So yeah. Get your questions in, get your peanut gallery comments in. I'll get those up, see if we can't get Tom and Tom to crack a little bit, have a little fun, some laughs. Let's what do you think? Should we get this party started here?
Absolutely.
Let's go.
Oh yeah.
All right. So we're going to start off with Tom Johnson and the Cass County. So I'm going to add this quickly to the stage. You all should see this up now. So Tom and Tom, the microphones are yours.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Tom Klimoski for helping me out with this. I have an iMac, a MacBook, and it's always given me problems when I want to share photos and things like that. And Tom was kind enough to take the photos I sent him, and he put them in a PowerPoint, and he's going to forward the photos as we go. So every once in a while, you're going to probably hear me go next, and whatever. So thank you, Tom, for all of that. Okay, I'm going to start off by the track plans and just point out some things so you have an idea of what I'm talking about and where the simplifications are. And that way, when I get to the photos, you will have a better idea of what you're looking at. This is the original track plan when I moved here about 6 years ago. I started building it about September, building the shells in my garage, and by the following spring, I was pretty much done. The basics, basically. I had all the buildings in, trees, everything is fully operational. It's a simple, narrow shelf layout. Everything about this layout is extremely simple. I wanted it that way because I'm 74. I had the long layout back in Indiana. It was over 100 feet long, narrow, still a narrow shelf, which I like doing, but it was a long ways. I had 20 some feet of running room between my three towns, each town. Yeah. So it's just single track through the country, some county roads, different things, cornfields, scenery. But here in Florida, we don't have basements, and I only had a spare bedroom that was basically 10 feet by 11 feet. So I had to kind of, I had to resort to a one town type of layout, and even narrow it down even more. It's actually the north side of Logansport, Indiana, going northward. And I do model beyond the basement or beyond the bedroom, the old Alan McClellan V&O philosophy, where my Cass County exists beyond the bedroom. I have elevators. I have different locations on the south side of Logansport that are not modeled in my room. I have my branch that goes north to Lucerne that is not modeled in my room. But what I have done is I kept all of my old photos of elevators that I've removed, photos of my elevators from my LNIN back in Indiana. And I use those photos to show those off layout locations to make my layout look bigger than it actually is. So looking at this photo, if you look on the right side of the photo, you're going to see, I gotta get my glasses arranged here. You're gonna see that elevator. There's two elevators there, and you can see the arrow showing both of them. That took up that entire 8-foot long shelf, and it was, it was nice, but after a while, it was just too much. I wanted more openness in that area. And if you look at the elevator against the backdrop, the top one, that when I spotted cars there, in order to get things spotted at the elevator down at the bottom, I had to move those cars out of the way. That's why I've got the two tracks down there at the end. And I don't know, I didn't like spotting cars on a piece of track where you had to go through there to get to another elevator. My interchange was across the top, the very top. That was my interchange. Okay. And then, of course, the only runaround I had was on the left side where my Farm Bureau Co-op is. And I had to utilize that runaround to get to the other parts of town. Now, remember, this is just one town, so we're not talking about a lot of miles. So one single runaround like that could work for quite a few blocks of track in town. Okay. All right. If we go to the next track plan, now you can see on this one, I removed both elevators. The elevator down at the bottom, right there, was moved up there in the corner, in the upper right-hand corner. So that's where it was moved to. I had to reconfigure it a little bit. The elevator that was just below that is gone, completely removed. I opened up that whole area, and I extended that shelf down in front of the door. I have to duck under that thing to get out. I don't like drop-in sections. I just duck under, and so far I think I've hit my back once, but I've managed to keep myself from serious injury. So that is my new interchange. Okay, so I would just place the cars on the track on an off day, and go from there. Well, after a while, I decided I could do more. So if we go to the next version, I extended it around the curve, and then that little piece down there along the bottom edge that says staging track, that is in front of my closet. And I have a backdrop of trees in front, so you cannot see the staging from out in the room. And you'll see a photo of that later. So I basically just put a fascia, but the fascia actually sticks up above the layout and not below. And I put trees on it, and I actually scenicked it and kind of made it look like it was three-dimensional because I glued some three-dimensional flat trees on top of the photo. So now that piece of track that was my interchange down there in the lower right-hand corner is now basically a track where I store cars. I did have a scrapyard there at one time, and I decided I don't want the scrapyard. So I like storing cars because I could pull cars out and I could store tank cars in there. I could store gondolas. I could store whatever. So it's kind of a neat thing. I don't use it that much. I've got a derail and one of those blue derail signs. So when I get in there, I have to open up that derail, of course, and remove the sign. And I could pull them out eventually and change them if I want. And then you could see, if you look up now, it's kind of in the center of the right side there. You could see the master mix feeds. I put it back in. I put a small feed mill back in that space because I decided, okay, I opened this thing up, but it was just a little bit too open. So I compromised by just putting a small mom and pop feed mill in there. It's not very big. It's actually smaller than what the diagram is showing here in this track plan. And I put a little abandoned gas station, but it's still all open. and there's a lot of trees in there now. And if we go to the next one, now you can see what I did. I had a bunch of people wanted me. They kept telling me, "Oh, you need to enclose it. You need to have a roundy," and I wasn't sure I wanted a roundy, but it works because if I enter that interchange from the left side of the layout where the Cass County Farm Bureau Co-op elevator is, that's going to Lucerne, 7 miles north of Logansport, where I interchange with the Erie Western. I decided to incorporate the Erie Western into my Cass County, the transaction group railroads. That also includes the Louisiana Midland. And it gives me a little bit of a prototype railroad that I could include into my freelance Cass County. So a lot of Erie Western and Louisiana Midland covered hoppers come out from my hidden staging from that side. Okay. Now, if you enter that staging from the right side, I think I said left side over there. Now, if you look at the right side, that is where I go into the southern part of Logansport to the Conrail yard, where I interchange with Conrail and also Toledo, Peoria, Western, and Norfolk and Western. So I kind of have a double-sided staging thing there, which has really worked well for me so far, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. Other than that, the only other thing that I added, if you go back to the master mix feeds on the right side, right there, if you go just up above it where that little road is, just north, right down, then up north south, up and down road, I put a trans loading site there, or unloading site, where covered hoppers are unloaded using a portable auger into feed trucks or gravity wagons or whatever. So I actually gained a spot by doing this instead of losing spots. So I can have up 2 to 3 covered hoppers there, which makes up for that elevator that I removed. And then I still have my elevator up in the corner, and I could put 4 or 5 covered hoppers up there. So I've still got plenty here to operate with.
So
go ahead.
I have questions. So how, you talk about the duck under, how tall is your layout off the floor? Because I didn't see it in the, I'm sorry, what?
60 inches.
So 5 feet, 60 inches off the floor.
Yeah,
so
and I'm 5'11".
Oh, okay. So yeah, and I'm only 5'8", so I could easily just almost nod under that. That's not too bad at all.
I duck under it easily. My problem is there was a couple of times I forgot to just take an extra step. I duck under it, and then I come up and bam, I hit my back, because I need to stay down that extra step as I go under. So, but I've learned to do that now, so I don't have any more issues with it, and I like it being permanently in place because I don't have to worry about alignment of trackage or anything if I have a lift up section or drop down section or lifted out section or whatever. I could easily remove that if I had to, because there's only 2 screws holding that thing in from each end underneath. I remove those 4 screws and cut the track, and boom, that thing will pop right up. So
no kidding. That's really cool. And then, so I don't know if we caught this. Maybe I just blacked out while I was looking at the track plan, but the timeline, how long was the progression? So you started this, 6 years ago?
Yeah, I started it about 6 years ago when we moved here. And like I said, I started building it around September, somewhere in there, getting the bench work up. And, I did the backdrop first to get that out of the way and got the track planned. I used masking tape to plan my track. I did not have any kind of drawing ahead of time. I just basically used masking tape. I put it down and looked at it and decided, okay, I like this. Or if I don't, I removed the tape and changed it. It's just that blue masking tape that is about as wide as HL track. And after I got the basics there, and I was modeling summer at the time, by the way, so everything was green. I would say probably about over the next 2 years, I was adding details and doing this and that and whatever. And then all of a sudden, I just got this bug in me that I wanted to model fall because that's what I remember the most from back in Indiana. And summer to me is too clean, if that makes sense. Fall fall is it's just chaos. I mean, leaves everywhere, and I modeled mid-October, so you got the typical fall displays in front of the stores, like my pumpkin displays and things that really tell you exactly what time of year I'm modeling, and on and on, and all the leaves on the ground along the edges of the rows, on the rooftops, and I like the color. So then I went through. I had to paint my backdrop because it was all green, so I used my artist background and went through and added some color to the trees, and then I changed all my green trees to autumn trees. Some of the green ones I actually painted a little bit with oil paints to show them changing colors and spots, as a lot of autumn trees do. You know, they just don't automatically go from green to yellow or whatever. And I did some of that, and messed around a little bit more detail. Then I started, switching out the buildings a little bit, changing this and that. All of my buildings are mounted on masonite. They're masonite bases, so I could do all the scenery around the edges of the building at my workbench, where you want to really be careful and get everything manicured as neatly as possible. And then when I put it on my layout, I just bring the rest of the scenery up to it, and I don't have to deal, leaning over the layout, trying to get the edges clean and crisp and as neat as possible. And then if I want to remove them, I just wet the area around the base of the building, and you'll see photos of that coming up here, and let it soak for about 10 or 15 minutes. And I take a little spatula and just kind of stick it underneath and tap it with a hammer, and boom, I can pop it right up. I do use little spots of CA to hold the entire base in place and keep it flat. So when I do add the moisture from the glue and water and everything to set the scenery, it won't, your base won't curl or anything like that, which I've never had a problem with that anyways. But those little spots of CA will come up, or you can knock them loose really easily with the with a spatula and a hammer. It comes right up. I could replace it, put something else in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we've got some pictures of the layout, do we not?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to walk us through all of the changes in the pictures.
I did a lot of explaining through those 4 track plans, so I'll try to be a little more brief as I go through these, since you have a pretty good background now of what I was talking about. Here's the first rendition. Here are both elevators, and you can see they take up that entire shelf. It's not a bad thing. I don't have a problem with it, but it was just too much for me. I wanted more open space, especially when I did the later editions. The open space even meant a lot more to me. So you can see the elevator on the right side is now back there in the corner on the left side in this photo. Okay. I just had to change the configuration. I had to take that green shed and move it behind instead of from the side. And here I'm pointing things out. Well, you can't see my fingers pointing things out. Jeez.
Tell me where to point, Tom.
Yeah.
Here, I do that all the time.
There's the green building back there that you moved.
Yeah, right there. Yep. And then over on the right side, where that elevator used to be, I put in this smaller feed mill. It's just a small mom and pop feed mill that serves small farms in the area. I'm talking about farms like my father-in-law had, about 120 acres. And, they'd come in and buy feed for maybe a few hogs or chickens or whatever else they had on their farms. And, the feed is easily mixed there. A lot of it's just brought in by covered hopper. You can see the transload. I should call it a trans unload area, and the portable auger. And you'll see some close-ups of that here after a bit. And a couple of feed trucks with the master mix signs. One's got they're 2 master mix signs, but they're different. I like a little variety instead of the same thing. All of my signage I get off of Google Images, and I print them on top-notch premium glossy photo paper, and cut them out, and I weather them. I'll drill holes in it, put little bolt details and things. Something's got to hold those signs up on the side of buildings.
Yeah.
And if some of them you can get already weathered off of Google Images, but some of them I weather myself. And you have to spray them with flat finish or dull coat first, because when you weather them like I do, dry brushing with oils, um, you, you get a better weathering appearance using a flat finish and dry brushing on top. If I dry brush on top of a glossy finish, it doesn't work the same. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
The building is I saw about that question. It is scratch built. Actually, I used 2 Walthers feed mills. I can't remember the name of the kit right now. Sunrise
The
feed
Sunrise
mills.
Mill. Yeah, the Sunrise feed mill.
Wooden thing, but I only used the middle section. I cut the right piece and the left piece off, and then I used the what I call the cupola, or the head house on top, from the second kit, and it extended this one up a little taller, and you have 2 windows there instead of 1. So it's just basically the middle part from that feed mill kit. And then I extended the top section up a little bit higher by using one from the other kit and gluing them together. I had to do some sanding and cutting to do that. And the silos are actually the old stave silos with the domes on top. And I have photos that'll back this up. I have a photo of an elevator or a feed mill almost very similar to this that has 2 of those old stave silos like you would see on a farm. So they are believable. You can use them, and you'll see a better photo of that as we go through. Okay.
Tom, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
When you do something like that, when you're, ultimately doing all those kit bashes, I'm just assuming, obviously, you save every other little part for other projects that you have. It's not like like I'm sure like other buildings you have the pieces from the parts that you didn't use on that one. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
If what I was saying made any sense whatsoever, because in my head it sounded a lot better than it did when it came out. So, yes is just the answer. Okay, thanks, Tom.
Okay, here is that elevator that I moved to the corner. I had 2 large. I'm having problems now.
Yeah, you've inherited the mic.
I'm getting dry mouth here.
There you go.
That's better.
This is my favorite elevator, I think, on the layout.
Yeah, I had those 2 green bins there, and when I moved the elevator, I couldn't use those grain bins anymore. I like them. I mean, I was really happy with them, but and then of course that whole grain elevator was moved down into the corner, and this is where that bastard mix feed mill went. Okay.
So is Chief like kind of like indigenous to Indiana? Like up here in Wisconsin, we have like Brock and what is the other one? GSI or the 2 big ones up here. Butler is another one. Yeah, Butler.
It seems like that I see a lot of Butler bins and Brock bins, and I wanted something different. And Chief is different. Plus, Chief was they built their parts or pieces to build these bins in Western Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say somewhere near Rensselaer, but I'm not 100% sure. But I did some research on that, and I know they had a plant somewhere in Western Indiana. So, Chief could be found in a lot of areas in the Midwest, and that's why I chose to do that. Here's a grain elevator that I completely removed. I've got it. I have it stored away, so it's in a box somewhere. But anyways, that was all pretty much scratch built. It started with the almost near the middle. If you could point that out, Tom, I can direct you there. Right, yeah, to the right a little bit more. Move, yeah, right there, that whole section, right in through there, up and down and whatever. That is a Silex grain elevator kit from American Model Builders, one of their laser kits. I bought two. I bought two of those kits, and I used one as the basics here, and I used the other one to make the extension to the right and to the left. And then I also bought some evergreen styrene, which had the same style of steel siding, and scratch built some extra pieces. And then the store way down at the far right edge, that is a kit that I bought and I just tagged on to the end. Okay. I can't remember. I think it was made by Grantline, but I'm not sure that store kit. Here's the picture of the elevator that I moved into the corner. And what I did is I eliminated the steel bins and I added the concrete silo. And I also moved the green building to the back instead of going off to the side. There was an elevator in Star City, Indiana that had all of these grain dryers. One was it was stacked. It was stacked and it was on top of a loading shed. So it was actually on a roof. And I saw that. I thought, man, that would be neat to model. So I put that up there on that. And then I added the other two on the side. I think they had 3 grain dryers by this elevator, which no longer exists. But I just thought that would be a neat thing to do, and I try to model what I see, and I try to model the unusual a little bit. So the top on the green building, if we go back to that a minute, I got to point this out because I got to give somebody some. Can you go back, Tom? There, yeah. That part, your cursor, your arrow's right on it. That distribution cube or whatever on top of the green building, that's by Southern Tier Grain Modeler Supply. That's Kevin Tully's business.
Yep.
And that is made specifically to fit the top of this Rick's building roof, and that is one awesome piece that he did there. They have another one that has the bottom of it is cut to fit a Walthers building, if I'm not mistaken. It's got a bigger pitch.
Yeah.
To it. So
I have questions before we move on. I don't want to race too quickly through this. I mean, this is all brilliant stuff and I want to make sure I capture it. So one of the things that I noticed here with this, and this is my favorite elevator, that the white building part, the head house and the white concrete silos.
Yeah.
How did you get that effect on the white concrete silos?
A lot. Being an artist, I taught art for 35 years, and being an artist, I have to say that a lot of things that I do is an accident.
I've wondered.
But there was a set. There were certain steps that I took. First of all, I painted the entire elevator a kind of a concrete color that I found in the hardware store, one of those rattle cans. Then after that, I used my airbrush and I sprayed over the top of that with another concrete shade, a little bit lighter. Okay, then I added some oil paint, dry brushing, making rows, and I used masking tape to set up the rows. And I started from the top and started moving down. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I sprayed over the top of that with white paint. And then I attached tape to all of that. And believe it or not, when I pulled that tape off, it pulled the white paint off and left some of that concrete showing from underneath. But it didn't pull it all off. It just pulled it off like it was, chipping away, like you see on real elevators.
And you used a chipping technique then, basically with using tape.
Yes,
to subtract the paint.
Yep, I used oil paint, but you could probably use these other things that you could buy for that, where you could get chipping effects, or whatever.
Beautiful.
Then I weathered it, because a lot of these concrete buildings, especially on the top edges down, they tend to turn that moldy green color.
Mm-hmm.
So I started dry brushing a little bit of that moldy green into those rows at the top, and I faded it out as I came down. And then I sprayed a little bit of white paint on top of it and pulled it off again. And lo and behold, that green is showing through the white a little bit. I hit the whole thing with flat finish, and then I did some more oil dry brushing on top of it, a little bit more of that moldy green color. And I just went through and I dry brushed a little bit of white paint in rows, starting from the top all the way down, and just sort of blended everything in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And to finish it off, I went over the whole thing again with a very thin spray using my airbrush of a concrete color to kind of blend everything in and tone things down just a little bit. And that's basically all I did.
Wow. That's all?
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said,
Right.
there's a lot of steps there, but once you do them, you'll know what to do the next time. And it really isn't all that hard. The basics, like I said, is just painting your basic colors there and then adding the oil, paint, dry brushing, or your other solution, whatever you want to use for chipping the paint. Then put your tape on there, rip the tape off, and you'll have pretty much what you want. Like I said, I just went over it a little bit more with oil paint. And that's the artist in me. I'm never satisfied. I just got to keep going at it and going at it. And that's why I keep saying some of this stuff is just accidental. And finished it off, and there you have it. I built one of these for my layout back in Indiana, and I did some of the same techniques, but they didn't look exactly the same.
Yeah.
So
I have a question now for you, Tom. You mentioned using rattle cans and stuff.
Yeah.
And do you modify the nozzle on when you're doing that in order to make the particulate more fine?
No.
Or do anything special to the nozzle at all?
No.
Or do you just use the stock one that comes with the because they do make different tips for those things.
I can't I think I used Rust-Oleum. Oh, it was some of their camouflage colors or whatever. But man, I was just impressed. I was always afraid to use a rattle can. I always used my airbrush. And I used a rattle can on that elevator. I used it on my steel-sided Farm Bureau Co-op as a base coat. If you keep that can moving and don't get too close, it goes on beautifully. And Lance Bidheim, I think Lance Bidheim uses a lot of rattle cans now. And he kind of got me started on it. I got the idea from talking to him that it works. A lot of these cans you could buy now in the hardware store, they have great spraying tips on them. Not like they used to be.
And that's why I was asking, is because I know that like in years past, the amount that the particles would come out so heavy and so thick that it would to do something like that, you'd almost have to stand 3 feet away from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it seems like I just bought a can of spray paint not too long ago, and the tip on it was, it even had like a comfort thing on it. It wasn't, and I'm like, this is kind of nice, and everything was smooth and it flowed really well. And I think you're 100% correct. It's that's awesome.
I hold the can about a foot away now. A foot away is about,
wow.
It's really good. I'm kind of looking at my computer screen and kind of getting an estimate. I remember spraying these things, and I'm thinking it's about a foot, maybe even a little less. And I keep it moving. Don't spray in one spot very long, because you can go back over it and give it a second coat later if you have to. And it went on perfectly. No drips, no runs, no drips, no errors. Or
just like Johnny Bench.
Yeah. and I'm very happy with it. It works. And now I won't paint my locomotives with a spray can, and I won't paint my freight cars with a spray can. I use an airbrush for those exclusively, and oil dry brushing and whatever. But for structures, I think the rattle can is great. And then you could go over that with your airbrush and add more shade, more color, fix things up here and there, just add your little extras after the spray can. So, okay. Well, here is just another overall shot with the master mix feeds. You can see the stave silo with the domes and the chutes going into the silos. Now, there was another slight change that I made even from this photo. You can see the caboose that I used for a little crew quarters and whatever. That was removed. Okay. And that whole area now where you're pointing out with that arrow is where I have my unloading area for unloading covered hoppers, loaded with feeds, things like that. And I did add some more trees over there. You can see on this one where I mount everything. I build everything on a masonite slab, and then you can see how I did the scenery up around the edges. I did all the details on the end with the pop machine and the cases and the feed bags. And everything was done on the workbench. So when I put that thing on the layout, I didn't have to do anything to it. I just did the scenery up around it and brought the scenery up to that scenery that I did on the workbench. It just made it a lot easier.
You bevel the masonite on the edges there.
Yes,
it looks like.
Yes.
So, is that what you're going to ask, Andy?
So I have many questions. Okay. I have many questions, but yes, I was going to ask: how did you manage the? I'm assuming it's 1/8 inch masonite.
Yeah.
And then you bevel it. Do you just use like a hand plane, a rasp? Okay, and then the how do you? Maybe this is too deep of a question, but I'm gonna pull a mic and just let it come out of my mouth and see what happens here. So when if you go back to the previous slide, Mr. Clamoski, that building seems to be fairly large, right?
It's long and narrow.
Yeah. Now, do you do pre-planning before you essentially get your base set up?
I build the entire structure, whether it's a structure, an elevator, or whatever. I build everything first on the workbench.
Yep.
And then I bring in a sheet of masonite. I lay the building on top of the masonite. I take a marker and I just simply trace an area around the edge. I cut it out with a skill saw.
Yep.
And bevel the edges, glue the building onto that base, and then do the scenery around it. And it stays flat. It doesn't curl up because that whole building, I mean, you've got so much glued together there that the building itself keeps everything flat.
Right.
But I might put a little dab of CA in the two corners there in the front, maybe 2 or 3 places down the sides. And then when I mount that on the layout, that CA will take hold, keep everything in place. So when I add my glue and water to my scenery, I don't have to worry about anything getting, too wet to where it'll curl up. And normally it won't, because the structure itself will keep everything flat. But I play it safe. I glue it down so it doesn't move. I don't want it to move ever, while the glue's drying. It's the same thing with this one. And the other thing I want to talk about is also, I think we all know how structures tend to be mounted, or they're higher, or they're on a higher ground in real life.
Yep.
Most of the time, there's always exceptions. I know that, but most of them are mounted a little bit higher. So having them on the masonite base, it raises them up a little bit. And then when you do all the scenery around it, there I am moving my hand again. Bring all the scenery up. I
conducting the orchestra here.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you get the idea there. And you can see all the details, and the details that I add to my structures belong. I don't grab things out of my drawer and just start throwing them on there. The thing I hate the most, I see sometimes these really beautiful, beautiful structures, and then I see these white metal blobs. I call them blobs. Some of that old stuff from years ago that are poorly factory painted, in my opinion. And a lot of this stuff, you got to really do some searching. I find a lot of it on eBay. I do other searches.
Sure.
Now, thankfully, for companies like Southern Tier, Grain Model Supply, Mini Prints, got to mention Showcase Miniatures. If you haven't seen any of their stuff, wow, they've got some neat details too. And Bernard Helen Mini Prints, wow. I mean, I've used a lot of his details on my layout now. And there are others. Tichy has some neat things you could use, which I think Bowser sells now. You could go on Walthers, and all of their Scene Master details are really nice now. As modelers, we have it made nowadays compared to back in the 80s when I first started. But the pop machines are 70s era pop machines, which worked for the 1980s easily.
Yep.
The Coke cases were still around in the late 70s, so some of those could still be around the 80s. Now, I have since changed those pop machines. My pop machines now that are located here are more for the late 70s, early 80s, where these pop machines you're looking at now are for 60s and 70s. Most of my pop machines by 1980 are the disposable cans and bottles now, but there were a few that still had the wooden cases and the returnable bottles, and the feed bags, with the correct labels, the gas pump with the correct label, the thermometer on the wall with the correct label, the clock with the correct label, a broom, a couple of chairs, add details that belong there.
Right.
Okay, we're ready to move on. And this is a close-up of the feed mill, and you can see that I added two smaller grain bins. They're what I call the farmer-sized grain bins. My father-in-law had one similar to one of these. And again, these are made by Southern Tier Grain Model Supply. So, Kevin Tully strikes again.
Yes.
And also, I mean, if you notice the augers at the bottom and the fans, I mean, they all come on these 3D printed things, and they're beautiful. The gravity wagon, that's another Southern Tier. Mini Prints makes them too. You can see the scratch built building just a little bit better. How I extended the top of it, and the silos, the fuel tank, the feed bags are sitting out. I had somebody, I shared a lot of this stuff on my Facebook group, and I had somebody, say, well, would those feed bags be sitting out like that? I mean, they get wet in the rain, whatever. Yeah, I've been on a lot of photo safaris, and I've seen it all the time. What they do is they set these things out early in the day on pallets or whatever, because farmers are going to come in and pick these up, and they just put them out and get them ready. Sometimes they'll put them out to try to entice you to buy something when you bring something in or whatever. If it's going to rain, there's not that many bags out there. I mean, they'll go out and grab them, bring them in, and they'll also bring them in at the end of the day when they close. So it's not like I have a bazillion feed bags sitting out. I just have a few on top of pallets in some places. And these are the feed trucks, and these the back ends again are also from Kevin Tully, and he makes several different kinds of these feed trucks. And I used an Athearn Ford F850, I believe. F850. It was one of their box van trucks. And I took the boxes off the back, and I had to shorten it up a little bit. So I basically, cut the frame right behind the fuel tank and the rear tire, and moved it a little bit closer to the cab, so the feed bed fits on top of it a lot better. And those signs were from Google Images. I decided to add those the way I did, because I didn't have decals for the doors. And I noticed that a lot of these trucks did not have any kind of sign or decal on the doors. Some of them were just generic, but I've seen some with the signs, large placards on the sides like that. I thought it looked better. It just added a little bit, more interest to the vehicle. So I added those, weathered them up.
I might have missed it. What did you use for the base truck?
It's the Athearn Ford F850, but it's their, they had the stake bed truck. They had the grain beds. This one was the box, the big box on the back. And I removed the box, and they just come right off of the frame. And the wheel was almost at the very end of that feed bed. And I wanted to end farther. So I cut the frame in the middle and took a little section of it out, and then glued the two back together to move the wheels in. When you look at this, if you decide to try to make one of these, when you take the box off and you look at it, you will easily see where you could make the cut. And nobody's going to see it under there anyway. So, I mean, if it's not clean or whatever, I don't worry about it. Nobody's going to see it. I just glued it together using some super glue and zip kicker so it would hold right away. Did some sanding and a little bit of carving with an X-Acto knife, and put the bed on top, and that was it. I weathered the cab. I put some paint down on all the cracks and the crevices, like where the door is and the front, the grill in the front, and all that stuff. And then I wipe it off with a Q-tip swab with some terpenoid, and that removes all of that and leaves the black down into the cracks and everything. And it makes them stand out a little bit more. The grill on the front, I did the same thing. Here is
Tom. I'm gonna give you a chance to catch your breath here for a sec. The Montana Northern wants to know
take another drink.
Yeah, I was gonna say have a little sippy sip. The transformers on the utility poles in the previous picture slide, were those scratch built?
Okay, the basics that you are looking there is from the Walthers kit, the Walthers utility pole kit. The Walthers kit has awesome transformers, and their insulators are really neat. But this is a combination of Walthers and Showcase miniatures. So the fuses there at the top, and I've got the wires actually coming down to the fuses that are mounted in that first crossbar on the top. I glued some really fine wire, or I think it was actually fish line, and I glued it to the insulator, and I brought it down to those fuses on that first cross arm across the top, and then you can see the lines dropping down from those down to the insulator on the transformers, and then down below the transformers you can see the heavier lines that are going down to the box across the bottom. Now that I followed pretty much what Showcase Miniatures showed. And I also looked at real photos, and I also saw what other modelers did. So the combination of the three, I came up with that. And it is, I call it generic. It's not a perfect match, but it's one of those good enough type of things. It gets the job done. And one of the things that I see a lot of people don't add is those metal bars or plates that go around the pole at the bottom to keep the squirrels from getting up there and shorting everything out. So I had those, and so the fuses, the fuses basically came from Showcase Miniatures, but Showcase Miniatures also makes some really neat transformers. So you could actually substitute the ones that come in the Walthers kit, with the Showcase Miniatures. And gosh, other than that, just adding the wires, it's pretty much there. I do like. Go ahead.
So did you take photographs of utility poles as well?
Yes.
I figured that as much. I mean, how do you just do something like this by memory? You know what I mean? But I mean, it's that is absolutely stunning. That
I don't know how I'm going to go ahead and share this. My college professor called me into his office one day, and he wanted to talk to me about some things because he knew I was going to go into teaching, and he wanted me to clean up a little bit on my use of grammar and things like that. I've been published a lot in a lot of magazines and different things here over the years, but I am not a good writer. I will always admit that. I do my best, and usually the publishers will clean stuff up for me, so I don't worry about it. But he told me that I had this ability, and he was able to see it in me through a lot of things I was painting and drawing. But he said I had a unique talent, if you want to call it that, of a photographic memory. He says that I have one of those memories where I can remember things in detail. And a lot of what I'm modeling on my railroad here in 1980, I remember seeing in 1980 in detail. And I tell people, I'll get somebody every once in a while that'll kind of challenge me a little bit. Well, I don't remember seeing this, or I don't remember seeing that. I always tell them, I said, if it's on my layout, I guarantee you I saw it in person. So I mean, I don't make things up. I have this hard time sometimes getting that through to some people. I don't make things up. So if I saw it, if it's on my layout, I saw it somewhere. Either in a photograph or on a photo safari, or just my photographic memory. Who knows? But it helps with the artist side of me, because that definitely helped when I was doing my paintings, my watercolors and oils and so forth. And now my last actually work of art that I did was in 1990. I have some of my old paintings hanging on the wall here in the house, the ones I didn't sell. And people say, well, why aren't you painting anymore? And I tell them, I do. I just paint in three-dimensional form now. I mean, my model railroad is a painting, and I approach it from the artistic side. A lot of people approach model railroading from the operation side, which is great. I mean, you know what? Whatever floats your boat, there are so many things in this hobby, so many ways to enjoy it. I like the narrow shells. I like the artistic side of it. I like the simplicity. I like running short, simple, slow paced trains and so on. All right, getting back on track here. Here is no pun intended there. Here is the trans-unloading area with the auger. That tractor is made by Artitech. It's a European version of an international IH tractor, but it works for here in the United States because Canada had a lot of them. And another Kevin Tully gravity wagon. And then those two bins, those are corn cribs.
Yeah.
And again, those are made by Southern Tier. I wanted a couple of those because this is a small mom and pop place. So, a lot of farmers will want to buy corn on the cob. I mean, everything's together and not shelled. Right. And so a lot of that is kept in those, and they have that option to buy that kind of corn if they want, or they could unload feed from a covered hopper into feed trucks that deliver feed to farms, or into gravity wagons if a farmer wants to come in and do it himself. And I'll tell you what, everywhere I've ever seen these places, there is feed spills all over the place. So I make sure I model those too. And I've got some pigeons there. Somebody said, "Oh, you need a black snake or you need some rats." No, I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go that far. Pigeons are good enough.
Yeah, stay with the pigeons, Tom.
Well, those are kind of like a rat. They just have wings.
Yeah, there you go. Here's another view. It's just kind of a lower view. You can see how I layer my trees in the background. I could talk about that a little bit more later. I made a bunch of tree flats, and I actually took a whole tree and I made it flat on the back side. So I had half a tree, and I glued those trees against my backdrop. And then I would layer other pieces and sections that I cut off. I saved those that I cut off, and I cut them down into smaller pieces, and I would glue those against the backdrop and basically make layers. And then I put whole trees in front, and that's how I get the illusion of depth here, using real trees and not depending on the backdrop anymore. So my sky, I painted my own sky, but yeah, I cheat a little bit. I like to put in real skies using Photoshop because I think it adds some pizzazz to the photos. So I do that at times.
Pizzazz.
That's a word my dad used to use. He used to say pizzazz, and he used to say razzmatazz because my dad was a drummer from back in the 50s and 60s. So anyways, here's just another view again. We don't need to dwell on this one. It's just another view. And I had to include a 3-notch feed cover hopper in there. Just to show that, yeah, there are some trains on my layout. Here's kind of a panoramic view of the whole thing. I mean, you could see everything from the transloading area all the way across to the feed mill and the bins. So that is the area that was changed, elevators removed and replaced and opened up. And I do think that I could say that is definitely more negative space than what I had there before.
Yeah.
I love the fact that single tree, Tom, separates that scene. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen one single solitary tree do that on a scene in a long, long time. I mean, it's just, for whatever reason, they never cut that one down, right?
Right.
I mean, that one just never got cut down, and yet it really does make it like two separate parts of, it's just a great frame for those two parts of the scene.
Well, the other thing I intended to do is, like you say, break the scene, but it also it kind of gives you that nostalgia that you remember at some of these places when you were little. I can remember these awesome shade trees, and I would get under that tree, and it would just be really neat underneath there. It'd be cooler if if it was in the middle of summer and it was hot, and it it would cast neat shadows on the ground on the side of the building. Just a lot of that artistic stuff that I remember, and placing that tree there, I think that was definitely the artist in me that did that. People ask me, how do you do this? How do you do that? But a lot of this stuff is already made for you. I tell people, go to Scenic Express and look through their catalog. I mean, a lot of the grass covering I use are just their static grass mats. I don't use the gun. I use their grass mats. They're beautiful. I buy a lot of their flower textures and leaf textures and all these different this and that textures. And I use maximum hold hairspray, and I spray the static grass down and add all those textures. And then I spray some more maximum hold hairspray on top. And I could run a vacuum over this whole thing and not suck one thing up. And I add all these textures, and they make all that stuff. The trees. It's all done for you. It's just a matter of putting it together. And I guess that's where the artistic side comes in, because you have to have a pretty good feel of composition and how to put the things together. And that can be taught. You can learn that stuff. So
they need to bring back Aquanet, Tom.
Yeah,
that's what they need to do. They need to, for more than one reason. I'm not talking about any of my beauty techniques for sure, but I'm just saying there's many applications that Aquanet was able to be used for back in the day, and it's sorely missed.
I use the pump bottles. They're those kind of that hot pink color. Can't remember.
You don't use an aerosol. You don't use the aerosol at all.
Oh no, never use an aerosol. You got to use the pump spray.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
You go through and you pump all that and spray all that onto your scenery, and it gets your scenery nice and wet. A spray will not wet it down as much because it tends to dry a little bit in the air.
The accelerant
and pump spray and get that scenery all wet, and then sprinkle all of your textures and things in that grass. You can see in this photo right here, you can see a lot of different textures in the grass. And then I just go through with my finger, and I just kind of lightly tap it down, and then I spray over it again with the maximum hold hairspray. And after a couple, 3-4 hours or so, man, you touch that and it's as stiff as could be, but it looks dry. It's not shiny. I could take the end of the nozzle of my vacuum and go right up against that stuff, and it will not suck it up.
Do you do anything to, like, as a surface tension breaker? Do you use like water and alcohol before you do the hairspray stuff?
No. The only place I use the water and alcohol is if I've got some dirt scenery around the areas.
Just to break that surface tension, right?
Yeah. And also, how do I attach all of my static grass mats and everything? I just take a bunch of Elmer's glue and I brush it around with a big fat brush and just brush it everywhere. And I lay these grass mats right into it. You don't have to paint the bench work. You don't have to put any dirt underneath it because you can't see it. The other thing is that I've also used spray adhesive. That's another way of doing it. And that goes down really well and it holds everything. The neat thing about spray adhesive is you could pull that grass off, if you wanted to change it or move it, but it won't come off unless you peel it off. If you go back to that last photo, I wanted to point out a couple of things on that before we move to this one. If you look around in this is an old abandoned gas station. You can see the hoop the Texaco sign is missing. I saw that on a photo safari. The gas pump, the Texaco sign below the face of the gas pump is missing. But notice there's an old Vendo Coke machine that was left behind. That's just kind of rotting away there. And there's an old Coke case. And if you look closely, there are 3 Coke bottles laying around in the weeds. There's one there, and one up there.
Look at this. And Tom Klimoski, Eagle Eye in the Sky, picks them right out.
Yeah, Tom's been here. He knows.
Yeah.
But, somebody says, well, that stuff wouldn't be seen today. Well, no, I mean, a lot of these antique collectors would be taking all this stuff away. I'm sure that Coke machine would be somewhere else now. But in 1980, we're still basically looking at stuff that's still around from the 60s and 70s. A lot of that stuff was still left behind, rotting away. And Coke bottles, 1980, nobody really grabbed Coke bottles that much anymore to take them in and get deposit money. So they're kind of laying around. So those Coke bottles, by the way, I've got to give mini prints a little bit of love on those. I kind of stained them a little bit with some green paint. Here's a side view. Nothing to add on to this. You can see the fuel tank. I built that fuel tank, but now you can buy those. Look,
there's the bus.
Yeah, the bus. That is a mini Prince, and it's awesome. Now, what did I do to it? I painted it. I know the example that they had on their website was a lot of rust. I looked at a lot of photos, and my wife, believe it or not, her dad drove a school bus very similar to this back in the I want to say early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, and it was in the back of their house on a farm in the weeds, just like this. She said this brought back memories. And what I did is I painted mine more of a faded, sun-bleached yellow, added a bunch of rust here and there. But I added the red lights into the blinkers above the windshield because a lot of those were still there. I also added three small MV lenses, the 3 yellow lights right above the split between the windshield.
Oh yeah.
And and also I've got one headlight and the other headlight is missing. That headlight is in, the other side's gone. And I added the stop arm, and I've got 2 red MV lenses up and down for that. I had somebody say, oh, they didn't have stop arms. But yes, they did. Stop arms went back into the 1950s. And my father-in-law's bus, which was a late 50s, I think, early 60s, had a stop arm. So I went through Google Images and I found an old stop arm. And I decided, that's going to be a neat little detail to add as a conversation piece to this bus. So I added it. I also added the windshield wipers. The glass is missing, but all the glass is missing in the bus, but the windshield wipers are still there. They're all rusty and nasty. So
is that this is probably way too technical of a question for this, but is that like an old, like based off of an old Bluebird body? Is that what that is? Like the old Bluebird?
I believe so.
You know what I mean? Andy, did you, when you and I were going to school and stuff like that, did you have Bluebird buses?
We did. Yeah.
Bluebird, yeah.
Yeah, Bluebird.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's just a Midwest thing, the Bluebird, or if that was national. But because that would be a cool scene in almost any type of part of the country.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. It just takes you back.
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay. And this is what we're all seeing. You can see the photo backdrop. My backdrops, trackside scenery, I think what it was called. Trackside scenery makes some awesome backdrops. Of course, I had to paint mine when I changed the fall. You could see the buildings kind of layered up back there, which is typical of Logansport, because on the north side of Logansport, there's a huge hill you got to climb to get out of town, because the town itself is in the Wabash Valley. And the Wabash River and the Eel River, or as we called it by the Indian name at Manchester College, because the river went right behind the college, the Kenopokomoko. But it's called seriously. But it's called the Eel River, and they both come together in Logansport. So Logansport's in a valley. And when I could remember the first time I entered Logansport from the north side, and that's I met my wife at Manchester, and we weren't married yet. We were just kind of on a date. We were going to go to the mall in Logansport. And man, when we got into Logansport going down that hill, my ears popped. I couldn't believe it.
Mm.
But when you look back north, you could see the houses, they kind of stack up a little bit on the incline. Now, a lot of the trees cover them up. And I have since added all of those backdrop trees that I was telling you about a couple of photos back. There, as you can see how I covered a lot of them up. And the reason why is I wanted more of a peekaboo effect like you would really see in the town where, you know, you could see maybe the top of this house or top of the building here and there. But I layered all of these tree flats by gluing pieces of flats against the backdrop, covering up the trees. And what that also did is it took away those odd angles. So if you look at these backdrop buildings from the side somewhere, you know, you get that strange perspective.
Yes.
Okay. So hiding that, you no longer get that. You're only seeing the fronts of the building showing through the trees, and that's it.
Yeah.
You can see the other detail across the bottom. You can see the pop machines are the newer, more 70s era machines. So you're not seeing the coke cases anymore. I did add, there are 3 of them stacked up over on the far left edge because there's still an older machine there. I'm modeling autumn, mid-October. So you got the pumpkin displays and the corn stalks. You know, all of these details belong. The mailboxes, the typical Army green mailbox and the blue and red that you would see back in those days. The little box crates of apples that were brought in, trash cans. If you notice the air pump beside the gas pump, I've got the hose wound up on the bottom, and I've even got the little silver nozzle on the end. I did that with a little drop of CA and zip kicked it so it would dry right away, and then painted it silver. And then the gas pump, I use real faces from real gas pumps. And I also use the plates where the arrow is right now, the plates below the face of the pump that covered up all of the, what I call the innards or the guts of the gas of the pump. And so I detail my pumps the way they should be detailed. You know, you're not going to see just a white blank face on any of my gas pumps. Notice the little milk cartons, that little green one there, and the guy sitting on 2 of them. He's got 2 of them underneath him that he's using to sit on. The ice machines, those are Home City Ice, which is located in Logansport, Indiana.
Tom, I just want to say that guy has got to be the laziest guy in model railroading because I don't think he's moved in years.
I don't think he has either.
Honestly, every time I see a picture, he's always doing this. He's in the same spot every single time.
Yeah, that's a mini Prince. I can't believe. I think that was what was his name that they used? Oh man,
Bruce Wilson.
Bruce Wilson.
Something with the
From the Modeler's
like
Life podcast, right?
Yeah.
The mail boy sitting on the
Bruce
on the milk crates.
You notice the leaves on the roof and the blackbirds and that phone booth on the end there's a cable that attaches the handset to the phone. I've got a silver cable dropping down with the phone book. The phone book actually has white pages, the yellow pages inside the black cover. I scratch built all of that. You could see that in some close-up photos that I have, but I don't think I've included any of them here.
Okay.
The boarded up windows on the second floor. This store is in the end days, obviously. 1980, you know, early 80s, they started coming to an end.
We have a question from the audience before we move on. How did you do the leaves?
Okay, the leaves again come from Scenic Express. It's their super leaf. It's called super leaf flake foliage. And they come in a lot of colors, but I like the one they call leaf litter. It's called leaf litter. And basically it looks like dried up brown leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And I use those for all of my leaves. I hold them in place, you know, with your typical, I like using glue, white glue and water. And I apply a little bit of detergent and water with a little syringe or, you know, to wet it. I don't like using isopropyl alcohol as a wetting agent in a lot of places. And a fair warning to everybody, do not soak your scenery with alcohol to do your scenery around a 3D printed piece. Because that concrete silo and that elevator that I showed you a while back, I did alcohol around the base, and then one night, the next day I came in, I looked at that and I thought, man, something looks weird. The bottom of it got soft, and it actually started blowing out. Yeah, and it has some fine cracks in it. But I was able to go around and squeeze it back in with my hand, my fingers, my thumb, and I added a little bit of CA along the bottom to hold it there, and then I just basically uh, may not look as good, but so I was able to save it. But don't use alcohol around 3D printed pieces. Use your water and dish soap.
Yep.
I like using alcohol in other areas. So, anyways, let's get back to this one here. This is, again, you're going to see the backdrop. You can see some of the river. I covered that river up in the next photo that'll come up in a minute, but you can see the tractors. This is just a small mom and pop. Now, see the difference now in the backdrop?
Oh,
compared
yeah.
to the last one?
Yep.
I just didn't want the water in that spot. You can see the river farther down to the right before you get to the elevator in the corner. But this is a small mom and pop's repair garage. They just welded old farm equipment that a lot of the small farmers still use. My father-in-law farmed with a 1951 Farmall M and a 1958 Case, well into the 90s. But other equipment could show up at these places to be welded. We had one near my house. They called it the blacksmith shop, and farmers would bring in their broken plows and discs and different things to have them welded and so on. I detailed my tractors. I weathered the motor areas to show more depth by putting black in there and then wiping it off with a Q-tip. I added MV lenses for the headlights. I added the fenders. The little tin cans on top of the exhaust stacks to keep the water out, because a lot of these tractors didn't have those little flapper flingies on top.
Yep.
Some of these tractors are 3D printed kits from Sierra West. Some of them are from Artitech. The Olivers and back are from Mini Prints. The Farmalls are Walther Scenemaster. There's a variety of everything in here.
That's
I
awesome.
even added. What's that?
I have a question about when we were talking about the leaves before.
Yeah.
How do you store those? How do you store them? So, I mean, obviously, you're not using an entire package at one time,
right?
So,
they just come in a paper bag. I just keep them in the bag and close it. It doesn't hurt them at all.
I found these at a Menards, and and I put them in containers like that, so that way I don't have a paper bag floating around over the place, and then it keeps them real dry. So if they tip over or anything, they don't spill out all over the place. Just something for people to think about it. Alternate for these are cheap. They're $2, $2 or $3 for two of them.
Okay, cool. You could buy the super leaf foliage material from Scenic Express. I think you can get them in bottles too. The bags are just cheaper. You pay less money.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, I use the dry leaves, but you notice that a lot of my leaves on the ground don't look brown and dry. It's because a lot of those leaves that fall on the ground are fresh leaves. So you can see all my foliage on my tree. So we're still in the early part of autumn where a lot of the leaves are still on the tree. So you get a lot of fresher colored leaves on the ground. What I do is I hold them in place with the glue and water. And after about a day, when they're dry, I go over the tops of all of my leaves with oil paint. And I add colors that I think are more realistic than just buying a lot of these leaves from the store that are just bright yellow, bright red, bright orange, whatever. I could add a variety of color using my oil paints to these leaves to make them look more believable in color. And I add them to the rooftops. They're in the back end of some of my pickup trucks. Leaves go everywhere.
They do.
I will not put them on top of my freight cars, though. No, I won't go there. I'm not going there. And I added some along the tracks, but I'd be careful there too, because the more you put between the rails around this and that, the more problems you might have with your freight cars, kind of doing that slinky thing, when they're going down, because the wheels are hitting some of that texture along the edge of the rails or whatever. So I make sure that the edges of my rails are clean, and I kind of keep the leaves a little bit away from the tracks, just a little bit. I spend more time along the edges of the roads, around buildings, rooftops, and places like that. Okay, yeah, you can see the layered trees in the background again. I won't talk a whole bunch about that because I've already gone through that. This kind
There
of
you
shows
go.
you how I do it.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, yeah. And there's also just little pieces that I add in there. All right, now we're going to go down to that first extension we talked about, the track plans at the very beginning. This is the first one. This was my interchange that went in front of the door, my duck under. And why did I keep the backdrop low? Because I want to stand and be able to talk to my wife, who might have questions on the outside, or tell me supper's ready, or she might have questions or have something to share. It's better than stooping over and ducking underneath and doing that. So I figured, you know what, it doesn't matter. And then you can see where it wrapped around. So my next extension was going down that right wall, going into the hidden staging in front of my closet. And I added these trees, the trees that you see from the center of this photo to the right, they're right out in front. They hide the entrance into the staging. The trees over on the left side, that's all basically photo backdrop and some layer trees in front. Now there is the staging. You can see, you know, I maintained the fascia below, but I added more fascia above. I originally left it white because I had this thing. I thought, wow, this will look good with all the white trim and molding in the room. No, guess again. Okay, next photo, boom, there you go. I added the photo backdrops, and then you can see I glued a bunch of tree flats randomly in front of all of that photo. And I also added a little bit of static grass along the bottom edge to kind of blend that into the modeled scenery.
Oh,
and then you can see the scenery back in the corner. Now, again, I kept that backdrop low because I want to be able to open that door and get things off the shelf in the closet and not have to duck under that thing to get into the closet to get them out, you know. So I purposely kept it short so I could get into the closet, get things out. Now we'll see some random photos of the layout. This area used to be where I kept my locomotive a couple of years ago. Remember, some of you might remember I had a transfer caboose here for a yard out. Well, I took it out, eliminated that whole thing when I moved it to the other side. And then when I made all those changes on the other side, I thought, well, maybe I'm going to keep this RS3 behind the hidden staging and have my train coming from off layout. And then I got to thinking, no, I want this engine on the layout. I want it to be in view. I want it to be seen when I have people stop by to see the layout. So I moved it back to here, and I thought the caboose was too much. So I just added barrels, and I added the Porta-Johny, which I've seen many times where locomotives are kept. And this area is still clean. I've added a lot more detail to this, which I think you'll see down the road. More barrels. Notice the cut down lines. People say, well, you know, some people like to string the lines. I don't. I think when you string your telephone poles, you're asking for a disaster to happen if somebody accidentally hits one of them. And now you've got 3 poles that are, you know. So what is a neat way of doing this? Well, a lot of these short lines, believe it or not, didn't use these poles anymore, and they cut the lines down. Sometimes the poles were cut. Sometimes the poles were left. The lines were left dangling, and then you have vines that grew up the lines and around the pole. So those are not guy wires. Those are cut down telephone lines. And I've got a few poles that are like that.
Yeah. They would cut down the lines and then be able to strip the copper out of them and get some dollars for the copper.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, I'm sure they wouldn't last very long. Somebody would be up there cutting them things down. You can see here again, you can see a couple of the telephone poles where the lines were cut down. So awesome. You can see the power service to the other side. Now you can see where I added a little more detail. I added those ties. Those come from Scale Signs, the company that makes all those neat signs.
Yeah.
Well, now they're making all these 3D printed things, which are awesome.
Really?
So many people are making 3D printed stuff out there now. and you could see where the tie plates used to be. There's that little rusty area. Well, again, I had somebody tell me, well, I don't remember seeing that. And I said, well, what did I say? If that's on my layout, I saw it. And I shared a bunch of photos that I had of that. And when I did those, I toned them down. They were a little bit too orangish for me. So I toned them down and I weathered the ties a little bit more with a light gray dry brushing using a real, what I call a makeup brush. Yep. And you can see the little grease buckets there, 5-gallon buckets. Those are mini prints again, and so are the barrels. And then I added a pile of signal targets here, signal heads, and some crossbucks. I saw a photo, or I saw this on a photo store. I took a photo of it, and there it is right there.
Oh yeah.
So I put this stuff in here just to show people, hey, you know what? Again, if it's on my layout, I saw it. It's there. And people need to look around and notice the details. Here's another row of ties that were farther down. The tie plates. Notice how they're in the dirt. They're not just glued on top. They're in the weeds. The weeds are growing up over the top and around the edges. I used a couple of resin cast tie plate piles to begin with. Trying to remember. Now that one I cannot remember the company. I got it on eBay. If you do a search, tie plate piles, you'll see them. But I didn't exactly like the way they looked, so I had a bunch of these Monster Model Works laser cut tie plates, and I spray paint them while they're still on the attached to the sheet.
Fret.
Yeah. Right, and then I cut them out, and And what I did is I took a brush and I lightly brushed zip kicker over the entire top of that cast pile. And then I took a real sharp X-Acto knife and I had a little puddle of super glue and I just stabbed those one at a time and then touched the bottom of it in a little bit of super glue and then attached it to the pile, and that zip kicker will grab it right away and hold it there. So I was able to, stab, dip of the glue, apply, stab, dip of the glue, apply. And I just kept doing that until I had the whole top covered.
Wow.
And then I went through and I touched up a little bit more with paint.
Yeah.
So I added this approach signal. This is one of those, I think they call it caution, but it's also like a distant approach that you would see outside of a town or city limits about a mile away. It basically says, notice it just has the 3 diagonal lights. All the other lights are blanked out. We had one like that in my hometown. And then the light down below. And that basically tells you that you may proceed beyond the signal, but reduce your speed and be prepared to stop at the next signal, which in Plymouth, my hometown, Plymouth, Indiana, was a diamond where the Norfolk Southern crossed. It's now Elkhart Western. Across this old Pincy line. So, which is now called the Chicago, Fort Wayne, and Eastern, if I'm not mistaken. I've also seen this where a signal is abandoned. It's turned away. All of the lights were removed. It's all rusted up. Vines
turned to the side.
I like that. That's cool.
Yep. And there's a view from the side. Now I scratch built this pretty much because I wanted the back to look like the real thing. If you're going to have this lit up like the one that a couple of slides back where it was all lit up, you've got all of those LEDs and you've got all that wiring in back. You don't have a choice but to have a little bit of a thicker backing to it.
Yep.
So make sure you include the box. Okay, here's the surprise. You've been looking at all of these photos of mine with that pea green fascia. And I was happy with it. I didn't mind it. Now it looks a lot brighter in the photos, believe me. But a couple of guys kept telling me they thought it was just too distracting. And of course, I'm stubborn a lot of times, and I kept putting it off because I didn't want to deal with it. And then, believe it or not, 2 nights ago, I think it was 3 nights ago, I just got this itch, and I went to Home Depot and got the gray paint, brought it back. And within 2 hours, it was all painted, all done.
Wow.
And so far, I would have to say that I shared this on my Cass County group Facebook page, and I also shared it on my MRH blog. And I would have to say that I think there was only one person out of dozens and dozens and dozens that kind of liked the green. But I mean, it was like 99% in favor of the gray. And there you have it. Okay.
Wow.
Famous saying, Tom Klimoski, Elvis has left the building.
I know. How am I supposed to follow that? I mean, come on.
We can.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Tom. And, Tom.
Good night, guys.
I'm sorry.
Good night,
guys. I'm sorry. You know, I get carried away. I talk too much.
No, you did great.
Oh,
you did great.
I use my hands too much.
I mean,
I'm sitting here rocking away in my chair because I can't sit still when I'm talking. You know, the only time I sit still is when I'm running a train.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why on the other show I had to go before Tom, because after Tom, everybody watch everybody start bailing on the podcast now.
No,
I gotta go. See ya.
Good
night.
Don't bail, people. I'm telling you, Tom Clamoski has some really awesome stuff to share with you. You will be impressed, and I think you're going to like where he's going with his layout.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Being that I've actually been to Tom Johnson's layout, as nice as it looks in photos and as amazing as it looks in photos, it's even better in person. It did not disappoint.
Well, thank you.
I mean, it is just unbelievable. And my wife is not a huge model railroad fan, but she got in and started looking at the layout, and she really appreciated all the details and the artistry that was in this layout. I mean, it's just amazing.
My layout is not big by no means. I mean, all I had was a spare bedroom. And I'm sure a lot of guys that are into the big operations layouts probably prefer looking at those more, but I'd make up for it with the detail and different things. I try to do things to make a person slow down when they're in here looking around and not just walk in the room and go, "Oh, is this all there is?" You know, and then boom, they're out the door. You know,
I was just blown away by something we talked about on the pre-show thing that you mentioned, Tom, and about the fact that you run the layout a couple of times a day, and it takes you a half an hour to move one boxcar from one side of the layout to the other.
Yeah. See, early in the day, I'll just go through and pick up all of the loads or all of the empties. And remember, this is just one town. So a local is going to go through and they're going to pick up everything that needs to be picked up and take them back to the interchange. Okay. So I'll pick everything up, and then that train will hide. It'll go disappear behind my hidden storage staging, and I'll quit. I'll leave it sit there for the rest of the day. And then maybe later on at night, after my wife goes to bed, my dog goes to bed, it's nice and quiet in the house, and I'll come back in here and I'll make up another train back there, and I'll bring a new set of cars out and set them out. So it's like a whole day. It's like I'm operating an 8-hour day. And also, I might have 3 or 4 cars. I might only have 1, 2 or 3 might go back to the staging. I might bring 1 out. I might take 1 or 2 back, bring 4 out, whatever. I try to keep the maximum at 4. I could go 5, but if I go any more than that, then my train is going to stick out on each end of my hidden staging, and that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So,
this is absolutely incredible.
And you were talking, Andy. You asked him how quickly he made some of these changes. I was there and operated on his layout, and he didn't have the continuous run. It was version 3. By the time I got back from vacation, which was a week later, he had already added the other part, finished it, scenery was done. So in a week, he had changed the layout, and you can't tell.
I love it.
It's blended so perfectly. You can't tell where he changed the other part, and there's no residual that, I could see where it used to be. No. It's just flawless.
I might sound a little offish to people when they make suggestions. Like I had several people say, close it in. You want a roundy round loop. And I kept saying, no. And I don't want to do that. I'm a point-to-point guy, and or somebody suggestions about my fascia. A Facebook friend of mine, I'll call him out. Some of you might know him. His name is Bill Jolitz. And he told me, he was just point blank. He tells it like it is. He says, I think your fascia is too gaudy. I don't like it. And on and on. And I was I don't know. I didn't take it positively at first, but I'm the type of person that might sound a little offish, or I might say, well, I don't know about that. But you know what? After about 2 or 3 days, I come around.
Yeah.
And I say, you know what? That person was right. And I do it, and I'll admit it. Closing in the layout, I think the people that suggested that were right. It gives me an option to run a train just to break in an engine or something like that, or have my double interchange now. Painting the fascia, people were right in changing the color. So
Oh, that was fantastic. Tom, I got to thank you for taking the time to sit with us and go through these changes. It's amazing how when you simplified it, you gained so much more. And
I consider it a gain. Yeah.
yeah. So we got another leg of the show to go here. So we're gonna kick it over to Tom Klimoski, Tom Johnson. Now you get to be in the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
And
Drum roll.
yeah, that's right. Get the drum roll out. Yeah.
Hey,
Yes.
what's this? This isn't the Georgia Northeastern. What the hell?
Yeah, what did you
What
do?
is that?
What did
No,
you
well,
do?
it's all Tom Johnson's fault. I went and
It's
operated
one-
on his layout, and I liked a lot of
car.
things that I saw. And there's a couple other guys that got me into the Southern, which is Tom Holly and Stephen Floyd. What happened was I kind of got tired of the Georgia Northeastern.
Mm.
I've had it for 13 years, and I've pretty much done everything that I can do with it. I mean, the layout is essentially finished. So it's like the dog chasing the car. Once you catch the car, what do you do with it?
That's right.
I
Right.
caught the car, and now my paws are worn down from dragging, trying to stop the car. So I've operated on. I enjoyed the layout, but I realized that there was a few things maybe that I could do better, and I wanted to a little change of pace, change of scenery. If you're a model railroader, you fall into a couple of different categories, and not that anybody fits into a category, but there's some people that are collectors, there's some people that are builders, and there's some people that are operators, and there's some that are kind of a blend of each. So if you're a builder and you've built everything, what do you do once your layout is done?
You start over and you build again.
Yes. Replace the buildings. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Like I said, I don't know. It was time for a change. It was time for a change. One of the things that kind of drove the changes is a lot of my operators that would come over would only do my first switch job, which was the area that you're seeing on the left-hand side there. That's Marietta. There's 6 industries there, and it would take an hour and a half to 2 hours to switch those 6 industries, with 6 cars coming in and about 6 cars coming out. You start off in the yard, you sort your cars, get them into the order that you want them to do the switch job, and then just working at maximum speed of 10 miles an hour, picking up, setting out. I'll show you the track plan if you're not familiar with it here on the next slide. And the guys would operate for 2 hours and go, okay, I've had enough. Time for me to go. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You still got 3 other jobs that you can do. Well, we've had enough, basically. Well, over on the right-hand slide there, you see that's my Marble Hill job. Picking up cars in the yard, coming down, switching these 2 industries. There's marble dust, which is loaded on the building on the left there, the big white building. And then marble slabs and marble chips was loaded at Georgia Marble. To switch that industry would take about 45 minutes to an hour. It looks pretty simple, but when you get in there and start switching, you realize your tail track's not that long, and you got to do some extra moves, and you got a facing point and a trailing point, and you got to do a little bit of thinking. So that's the second job. A third job was taking cars from the Tate Yard and going down to Elizabeth Yard, swapping those out, bringing those back. And then the final job, if you look at the track plane here, is a company called Universal Alloy, which makes aircraft parts. And they ship aircraft components all the way out to the West Coast on flat cars, and they need idler cars on each end. So to do this job, you need 3 cars to come in to pick up one, an idler for each end and a flat car to replace it. So that was done as a separate job, just as it's done on the Georgia Northeastern. All these jobs are the exact same jobs that they do on the Georgia Northeastern. The yard job, which is in Elizabeth, works all the way up to Dow Chemical, and that's considered part of the yard. So that's one job. Another job is 2 to 3 times a week, they'll take cars from Tate down to Elizabeth, pick up the cars in Elizabeth, bring them back to Tate. They hold them in Tate Yard until they need them down in Marble Hill, which is the third job, where they come down, work the industry, come back. They hold the cars in the yard till they get enough to make that run down. And then, like I said, the final job is run by the yard, which they just come out and just work universal alloy. Some of the things that I didn't like on my old layout was the peninsula and the aisle space. It crowded the room. Tom Johnson has a nice open room. He has basically this. My room's probably a little bit smaller than Tom's. Mine's 9 foot by 10 foot. Tom's, I think, is like 10 by 10 or thereabouts.
10 by 11.
10 by 11.
Yeah.
But it's so much more open because he doesn't have a peninsula in the middle, and he's able to walk around, and it just gives you a much more open feel to the room. I can't tell you how many times I've run into the peninsula coming around the corner, bumped it, stood up, banged my head on it, working around it. I finally got to the point where I said, this thing's gotta come out. I'm tired of dealing with the tight aisles. They're 28 inches wide, which is adequate, but still a little snug. So by removing the peninsula, that's going to really open things up and give me a lot larger looking layout room, and gives me a little more room for my workbench and that kind of stuff. So in the new plan, we're going to see what we can come up with here. So I wanted to change. Why did I want to change? It was time. It was just time for me to move on to something else. I don't believe there's any alimony involved with me divorcing my Georgia Northeastern layout, although there might be some. I think the hard part will be getting rid of some of the children, also known as the locomotives, and some of the cars that I've become very familiar with. Those might be a little harder to let go, but I've got a couple of friends that have already the wolves are circling, and they see and they've already asked for some of the locomotives and stuff, and I said, yeah, when I'm ready, yes.
The body's not even cold yet.
No, the body's not even dead yet.
No, it's not. The vultures
bunch are scavengers.
When I go outside my house, I see a bunch of vultures up on the roof, and those are my friends.
Oh no!
They're ready to pick over the kill. So
that's awesome.
You gotta laugh. It's fun, and they'll go to a good home. I know the guys that have already asked for them. They're real good friends, so they will go to a good home. I know that they'll appreciate them. And then some of the cars, I'll have to figure out what I want to do with them, if I want to keep them or sell them, or they'll go to good homes. When I got rid of my layout from Miami, a lot of my cars went to some of my good friends down there, and it's fun to see them on the club layout that I belong to down there. I was like, oh, I remember those cars. I weathered that. Oh, I remember that. So I know they're at a good place. Better that than sitting in a box in my attic. So
that's right.
They're not getting any love sitting in a box in my attic. So what did I want to do? Well, I still like slow speed switching. I really like the one train a day, goes down the line, works the industries, comes back to the yard. The last mile railroading, if you will. Sure. I'm not a mainline guy. I'm not a passenger guy. It's what I like. And that's one of the things that I want to bring out is do what you like, not what somebody else says you should do. And, take their advice or listen, but decide and do what you want to do, model what you want to do. So couple of the other requirements, it has to fit in the current layout room. My wife is not going to give up any of her craft room. I think some of her craft room is starting to creep into my layout room, and I've had to deploy a force field to keep some of it out. I decided I wanted to switch
guard.
Yeah. They may not be armed, but there are guards there to keep my room.
The dogs.
Yeah. I wanted to change to the Southern. The Southern, for me is a classic railroad. I mean, the tuxedo paint, the long hood forward, as my friend Tom Holly says, I got my mind right if I'm modeling the Southern. He's worn me down, and yes, I'm going to model the Southern. The other thing that I like is the seaboard coastline. That's what I saw in Miami when I was growing up, which coincidentally ran on the Miami downtown spur, which everybody knows from Lance Menheim. And I was very familiar with the line when Lance started modeling it, and gave him some pictures and did some rail fanning for him, and was his eyes on the ground there to kind of tell him what was going on with the Miami downtown spur. But I remember seeing the locomotives and that classic bumblebee or black and yellow paint scheme for the seaboard. It's what I remember. And again, people do typically model what they like or what they saw when they were kids. So this kind of goes back. Oh, while I didn't really see the Southern as a child, it was around in those days, so I did know a little bit about it. I wanted a layout that had an interesting mix of car types and industries, or maybe one industry that had a nice mix of car types. So having different car types makes it more interesting, at least for me. I wanted to drop back a little bit to the 80s. One of the main reasons is I didn't want to have to put ditch lights in any more locomotives. That is not my favorite project. And I put ditch lights in all my locomotives on the Georgia Northeastern. Why? Because the Georgia Northeastern has ditch lights.
That's right.
Peninsula, as I mentioned before, that's not negotiable. That had to go. I'm not a continuous run person. I like to run point to point. When I'm running the layout, I'm running the layout. I don't just set a train to go around the layout, go in endless circles. So that's me. Other people, the continuous run is a lot more important. And there is some benefits to having a continuous run. I also wanted to reuse some portions of the current layout. I didn't want a total destruction. The layout is working perfectly. I mean, no derailments, no stalls, switches work, everything works. Why am I going to blow it up and start from scratch? So I'd like to try to keep some of the bench work that I have and maybe reuse some of the tracks. So I said, well, how about modeling a paper mill? And this is a paper mill in Coucy Pines. And if you have my book, shameless plug, you see that there was hashtag not sponsored.
That's right. That's right.
there is a chapter there on layouts, and there is a small section on Coucy Pines, which is a paper mill there in Alabama. My good friend Tom Holly worked there for many years. He's a subject matter expert on this facility. So perfect. I got pictures. I got everything I need. This is wonderful because it takes different car types. You got chips, you got pulpwood, you got box cars, you got tank cars, you got hopper cars, you got pretty much everything. And they even had an old coal-fired generator that generated power for the facility. So this is the track plan that I was given. This is a hand-drawn track plan that the crews used to use on how to switch. So you can look and see at all these different car spots, and you can see chlorine, turpentine, towel oil, etc. Chlorine, salt cake, pulpwood. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And there was a yard a little bit off of the picture here, and that's where the cars came in. And it was served by both the Southern and the Central of Georgia, and also later CSX and Norfolk Southern. So you had two different railroads here, and they ran what they called the shared power in their final days before this became another operation. They had one locomotive from CSX and one locomotive from NS coupled together, and that was their engine crew for switching this plant. And they had crews from both railroads operating it. So it was pretty neat. So I said, well, let me see if I can get something like this to fit into my layout room. Well, it pretty much fits. I've got the staging cassette, which would be the yard, which is where it interchanges. You come in, and this is just the paper mill. So you've got your large paper mill here, which is rolled pulp, which is shipped out in box cars. There's your power plant up in the upper right-hand corner, which would take your coal, open top coal cars. Over in the upper left, you've got wood chips and pulpwood. And then you've got all your belly of the beast, as Tom Holly would call it, this towel oil, turpentine, chlorine. This is heavy industrial pipes running everywhere, all kinds of craziness there. You overhead piping, caustic soda, all this other stuff. And then on that little peninsula there, as it comes out down here, this is where they would interchange with the seaboard coastline. So there would be some cars set out here for the coastline, and the crews would run down, pick up cars, set out cars, and that kind of stuff. And I said, well, this'll work. This is pretty good. But it's not me.
Uh-oh.
This is not what I really wanted to model. Again, what is it that I said that I liked? Slow speed, switching operations, one train a day. Well, this train, this is a full-time 24/7 operation with switching cars out at the paper mill, switching the tank cars out, switching this, if you don't get the cars there in time, the factory has to shut down. The rolled pulp has to be delivered. I mean, they would switch this a couple of times a day. I mean, it's very busy, very, very busy. So I was like, plus there's a lot of complex modeling here, and I'm not a complex modeler. I'm a simple modeler. So maybe let's do something a little simpler. And this is
even further back.
No, well, the pictures from the 70s or 60s, based on the vehicles. 70s. Yes. We need. Where is William Sampson when you need him? Where is William Sampson when you need him? So I had an intervention. Basically, I had a couple of guys, and I said, I need to find a railroad that I can model. And where is it that? And I gave them my Givens and Druthers. This is what I'd like to model. This is what I'd like to do. And again, two very bad influences, and I'm not going to say their names, but their initials are Tom Holly and Stephen Floyd. Got together on a Zoom call, and they said, well, how about Dublin? I said, Ireland? No. United States? No, there's Dublin, Georgia. Dublin, Georgia. Never heard of it. Well, it's between Macon and Savannah, and this is Dublin in the I think it's 1913, 1918. I can't read the number on there. I think it's 1918. This is Dublin. Can you see all the tracks there? Wow. This was a happening place. There's a freight depot over here, which is the Macon, Dublin, and Savannah freight station. Then right across the street from them, all across the tracks, is the W&T, which is the Wrightsville and Tennell, which runs from guess where? Wrightsville to Tennell. Yeah, well, they decided Wrightsville wasn't far enough, so they came down to Dublin, and then they just kept going south and west and just kept gobbling up more cities and stuff. So it actually came down through Dublin. Dublin was a happening place because over here on this left-hand side, this is the Oconee River, which was a major waterway where they brought goods and all kinds of stuff up, and Dublin was on the river, which made it a perfect place to interchange and pick up freight and take it to the river and get the stuff from the river and put it on the railroads. And there was my history might be a little off, but I believe that one time there was 7 or 8 railroads that came into Dublin back in the early 1900s. So I said, well, that seems a little busy, but it might work. This is, if you look at the map, this is the central of Georgia. Central of Georgia took over the Wrightsville and Tennell, early 1900s, we'll say. And if you're looking for where is the Wrightsville and Tennell, well, if you look here on the center of the map, you see that little dot there that says Dublin, and it says W&T. So there's from Tennell to Dublin, a whopping 36, 38 miles. And that's it. And then the other railroad, which is the Macon, Dublin, and Savannah, which I bet you can't, I'm sure you can't guess where it ran from. It ran from Macon to Dublin to Savannah. So that's the second railroad that was in
that's
town.
Not what I was going to say.
No.
I think he gave you the answer, Mike.
So from Macon to Savannah was a pretty heavy line, and they ended up having a little branch line that would come down, and it was run by the Central of Georgia, which was later taken over by the Southern. And we're not going to go into all the history, and there's not going to be a quiz at the end, so we're just going to keep going. But here,
that Baldwin's cool though.
Yes, it is. It's very cool. Unfortunately, I'm going to model 1980s, and they weren't around in that time. So 4-axle diesel still, but not a Baldwin or a in-cab switcher. This is not a presentation on the whole thing. I'm going to be working on that for some other time, for another show, maybe my 6th time on the second section. But this is just talking about why I changed. So here is gold for a model railroader, a timetable if you want to try to model the prototype. And here is the branch line from Tennell to Dublin. And if you look here, there's 36.3 miles, and they ran 1 train a day except Saturday. Okay. And they started off in Tennell, and they ran down to Dublin, turned around in Dublin, and came back. There was no way they met these times. There was no way that they could switch Dublin in 8 minutes. So you can always run late, but you could never run early. So they were always protected against themselves. There was no other, you didn't have to put any protection against following extras unless instructed to do so. So it was 1 train down, 11 came down from Tennell, turned around and went back. And that was their day. They started at 8 o'clock at night, and they finished theoretically at midnight or just before midnight. I don't think they ever finished before midnight, and that was in 1981. If you go back a few years, the trains actually went the other way. Dublin was a bigger terminal at that time, and they started in Dublin, went to Tennell, and then came back. So these kinds of things are gold for a model railroader. But this was the nut that a squirrel found for me, that Tom Holly happened to have a Southern Railway track inventory and placement system chart.
Oh man.
And what does this tell you? Everything.
Everything.
If you look down here at the bottom, you can see there's a Y, and this is Tennell. And then the track comes down, and this is the first town. You get into Harrison, and then you get into Wrightsville, and then you keep moving down. There's Wrightsville, and you cross through Lovett. And these numbers here, those are industry codes, D10, D12, and it tells you what the industries were on a separate sheet. So if I go to the next page, here is page 2 of 3, and you come down, you hit Fraser Wood, and then down here you have Roach Manufacturing, which sounds kind of strange, but it's pronounced that way, and it's grain silos. Seba Gingy, which is a chemical company. Griffin, which is a team track. Gaywood, Choo Choo Supply. No, I didn't pick Choo Choo Supply as one of my industries. Northern Propane, Southern Sales, and Tex Gas. So I've got gasoline and oil. I've got Southern Sales, which is boxcars and miscellaneous freight. I've got a propane dealer. I've got a wood place, which I'm going to use Fraser Wood. I've got a grain facility. I got a chemical facility that takes cars and boxcars, and I got we'll call it a transload track here at Griffin Industries. So we're looking pretty good. We continue on and we go up this way, and if we go across the river, here's the Oconee River, and you come into Dublin. If you take the branch over here, there's Southern Peanut. There's one here, and then there's Gold Kiss, which is an industry that has grain. Work your way down here. There's the main line. Hall Ready Mix, which is ready mix cement plant. Sheet metal, iron, house track, a depot, Nelson Company, which I can't find out what that is. And then it interchanges with, guess who? The Seaboard Coastline. I went, Eureka. This is it. There we go. So let's see if this can be translated into a layout. Well, here's some aerial shots just so that you get a little better idea of what we're dealing with here. And look what it says on the aerial map. This is from the county, Southern Railway, Norfolk Southern Company. So it's still theoretically part of the Southern. It's now a Genesee and Wyoming railroad called the Georgia Central, and they have an engine placed there. There's a little, we'll call it shack, where the engine office is. So here's Griffin Industries, which is basically a team track. Here's Seba. Southern Sales, Northern Propane, and Roach, which is this area here. And you can see the tracks are still there. And if you go back on Google Earth and that kind of stuff, you can find, images where you could see where the tracks came down to the propane company, and you can see this used to be rail served. So I've got a pretty good idea of what's there. And I did a field trip there this summer and went and took pictures of all these different buildings that are still existing. And the ones that aren't existing, I found some on Google Earth that go back a few years, and you can see what's there. Right here, this little tiny dot, that is the Georgia Central Depot. There used to be a depot here, but it burned down. That was the big depot. And then there was one across the street that was gone. This is Hall Ready Mix, which is right here. So there's Southern Peanut, and here's the river with the bridge going across it. So let's see how this works out for a model railroad. I can keep my staging cassette. I just changed things around. We're going to have tracks. The crews will start in Tyndall, and they'll have to sort their cars just like they do on the prototype. They'll have cars coming from the east, cars coming from the west, and there's a caboose track. So you've got plenty of tracks to sort your cars on with the main line there. First industry you come to is Roach. You have SEBA across the tracks from it. Here's Griffin Industries. You got a runaround track, Southern Sales and Northern Propane. And then here's where I moved that Fraser Wood Products, which technically would have been down here. I just flipped it and put it over here. And then Tex Gas over here. So it kind of replaces the industries. Not a whole lot of the track is changing from the old layout to the new layout. This siding that used to curve and become the continuous run now just straightens out and becomes part of Roach Manufacturing, which is, again, grain. The river that I have now stays the same. I can keep the river after all those adventures with pouring the river and bugs getting stuck in them. I've decided I'm going to leave that alone and not going to try another one. So I come off here, and what used to be the main now gets terminated and becomes Gold Kissed and Southern Peanut. And then the main line now becomes this track here, the inbound inside track. You got a long runaround track, and then you're going to do the Dublin. This is Dublin, and this is the Hall Ready Mix, and then a house track. If you remember from the diagram, there was a lot more tracks here, a lot more industries. This is part of simplifying it. I tried to put another track in here. It got too tight. I thought, well, I can make this bigger. No, I resisted temptation. I'm just going to have the house track, the depot, which is abandoned basically at this time, and that's it. So simplifying the layout. Coming in here, this siding that used to go to the peninsula gets cut off and straightened out, and it becomes pulpwood loading, and it's going to be switched by the Seaboard Coastline. So there'll be an engine and maybe a car or two staged here. Come in, switch the pulpwood, come into town, set out, pick up, and return back. That's the Seaboard line, and then the rest will be done by Southern. So simplifying what I have and trying to keep the aisles open, which in this case, I don't have aisles anymore because the peninsula is gone. So I just wanted to simplify as much as I could and keep things similar. I was able to, like I said, to keep the bridge. So this scene will stay basically the same.
Yeah.
And I've got some Southern power now. And then this bridge scene also gets to stay, which is nice because it was a lot of work to do this. So I didn't want to, like I said, just blow up the whole thing. I wanted to try to, keep it somewhat simple. So basically that's about it. Probably going to start on it late spring, early summer. I'll amputate the peninsula and start reworking some of the track. and then the vultures will come and pick over the Georgia Northeastern equipment that is going to be removed. I'll take the buildings off. It gives me a chance to scratch build a bunch of buildings. Southern Tier Grain Modelers. You guys heard of those guys before?
Oh, yeah.
I think Tom only mentioned it like 50 times. Hashtag not sponsored.
51.
Yeah, it was. They made the section crew made a drinking game out of it. Every time Tom mentioned.
Well, they had to take another one because I mentioned them here. So I'll get some of their grain bins over here, and then probably a few over here. And I gotta like I said, this is not the presentation on this branch. It's focused primarily on simplification, but I've got pictures. I've got some some old photos from the 70s and 80s of the railroad when it operated as, the Wrightsville and Tennell. A lot of interesting history. One of the fun things of doing this was doing the railroad archaeology, which was going back in time, trying to find pictures, trying to get information, finding stuff on Google Earth. And, I'd go back and I'd do the street view, and I go, oh, I can back up a few years. So I go back, oh, look, the silos are there. In this picture, you go forward a few years, the silos are gone, or they've added a silo in this side, or, that kind of stuff. There's going to be some really interesting structures to scratch build. Some will be kit bashed, and I'm looking forward to it. I think the other thing that guys have talked about is why do this? I think some of it is I needed a revitalization.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why I make the changes on my layout. It's just I just got to do something every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Tom, if you ever have any issues, like start having second thoughts or anything about that peninsula, just let me know. I'll fly right down there. I'm pretty good with a Sawzall. I can have that bad boy down in like 2 minutes. I will not hesitate to cut that thing right out of there.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah,
hey, you might have some competition.
I was going to say, I think there's some people lining up at the door.
Well,
there's more vultures. I hear them on the roof already.
Tommy Foltz. Yeah. There's another Tom. There you go. Tommy Foltz is the one that tore all of my layout down back in Indiana, and he's now inserting it into his layout. My old LNIN is kind of a branch line on his layout, but I mean, he's real good at cutting stuff out, bringing a trailer and hauling it off. So there you go.
Yeah, well, to answer Tim Moran's question is does the crew work in Tennell reach into East Dublin? Slightly, yes. They'll have to go through the hole in the wall and end up on the main line. One of the things that was kind of neat is because I had the track plan and my track was pretty similar, I said, how long is it going to take me to work this? So I actually worked the job, and then where I didn't have a switch, I would just move the locomotive from one track to the other and ran the switch job, and it took about 2 hours, which is the perfect operating time.
There's the vultures. They're coming.
Yeah.
They are.
Go.
It's fun. So you see the inspiration there. I'm acquiring equipment. I've been buying cars as needed, era appropriate. Some of the covered hoppers, I didn't really have any covered hoppers for grain, so I got some of those. The caboose that's over here, that was a right track caboose kit that beat me to death. It was not fun, but I got it done. And there are a lot of stories with that one, but it's done.
Doesn't somebody make a ready-made caboose similar to that now?
Sure, because I finished this one.
Yeah,
I was going to say you built the model of it, so now the manufacturer
That's exactly
has
how
something
that
to go off
works,
of.
Yes,
I can't remember who it was, but
yes.
That's
as
exactly
far as I know,
what happened.
not that particular model. That's an M4, M5 caboose, which was specific to the Seaboard Coastline. So they're you get something close. I did get another Seaboard Coastline caboose, but it's a different style caboose. So I got a couple of Seaboard Coastline locomotives. I got decoders in them, are already programmed. I already operate them on the layout. So I've occasionally, if I have a guy come over and he wants to operate, I'll say, "You want to run Southern or Seaboard Coastline?" I'm okay with that. So yeah, we'll run one of the Seaboard Coastline locomotives or a Southern locomotive on the Georgia Northeastern, switching the current layout. But it was nice that I was able to kind of test run to see if my theory was going to work out and if it was doable, before I got, fully immersed.
So we got a question from the Chicago, Denver, Northern.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a bigger room, would you keep the peninsula, or does the peninsula just not fit your operating plan?
For the new operating plan, it doesn't really add anything to it. I guess I could have had staging down there for the Seaboard Coastline a little bit more, but it doesn't really add anything to it. And for my room, the size of the room, it just crowds it too much.
Yeah.
So, and I also, on the old plan, I had a duck under that industry that goes across the doorway there, the Universal Alloy, the one that was switched with the idler car. I would only put that in when I was switching the industry because, again, I hated ducking under there. I know Tom's layout's a little bit higher. Mine's at 54, and then by the time you get the fascia and all that other stuff, you're ducking under at 48, 49 inches there.
Yeah.
And as Tom says, I've got scars on my back from standing up too fast. And yes, I do put pool noodles there to cut down on the scars. But the peninsula, the staging cassette in the craft room is enough of an obstacle, and you can walk around the table that it's set up on, so you don't have to duck under. When guys come over, I say you can duck under, you can walk around. Half will duck, half will walk around, because it's just. It's just the stupid. It's the standing back up that's the problem.
I'm putting a sign underneath mine that just simply says "duck, stupid."
Yes,
there you go.
I stood up one time under the staging cassette and hit my back so hard it put me on my knees because it was like. I was like, oh, yes. So now I duck walk all the way out into the other room, which is about 20 feet away.
You guys are lucky, though. I mean, so I'm follically challenged, and I risk scars if I do something like that where I'll I'll basically scalp myself if I hit my head on something.
Yeah, no, you don't want to.
If Tom's trying to show what it looked like, the duck under the chair did a great job. There you go.
Yeah, the chair got in the way.
There he goes.
Oh, here we go.
He's
gone.
That's not okay.
Like
so that's
not
horrible.
too bad. It's not too bad. No,
it's all right.
I was there when I went there. It wasn't bad. I'm a little taller than Tom.
Yeah.
Now let's see you do it and stand up a little early, just as a demo.
Just to demonstrate the whoops.
My buddy just came in to see me.
And then there you
She's
go.
saying it's time to go for a walk, right? Aren't you, buddy?
Yeah, it's about that time.
Yeah.
So that's the plan anyway. I don't know if it's good or bad, but we'll find out as I get into it.
I like it.
And again, do what's right for you.
Yeah.
Again,
exactly.
Mike, I think Mike and Andy, both of you guys have kind of had some changes and rethinks and resets, and do what's right for you.
I'm starting to go through possibly another one. It's just some of the things talking with you guys the other night. I'm sat there and looked at it again, and I'm like, why am I doing it the way I'm doing it? This is too much for what I want to do. I don't know. Yeah. So I'm trying to simplify again, Yeah.
So well, when I went over to Tom's and we operated for about an hour and we switched maybe 5 cars.
Yeah, we didn't do that much.
It wasn't that much. It just slow speed operation, nothing fancy, no gotchas, no double switchbacks, nothing. Just keep it simple, keep it realistic, and have fun, and keep the speeds slow as you're operating, and you'll find that you don't need that much of a layout to have a decent length operating session. Everybody thinks you need to have this monster layout. Some of the other layouts that were inspirations for me was Stephen Floyd. He models the Sylvania branch, and he's got a 26 by 16 room, and it's a very simple, just switching layout, lots of open space. That was one of my inspirations, along with Tom Johnson. Jared Harper is another one. Slow speed branch line, modeling the Alma branch, the Santa Fe.
Yep.
3 hours working one train.
Yeah.
Working your way up the line, switching the industries, doing a turn at the other end, coming back. A lot of fun. Really, really fun. And then Lance Benheim is another one. His downtown spur and LA Junction. I mean, very simple, very straightforward track plans. Nothing fancy. You could figure it out. I mean, you walk into my layout or Tom Johnson's layout and you go, okay, I got it. I had a couple guys come over the other day, professional railroaders. Gave them the proto throttle, gave them the switch list. They went, yeah, we got it. Go ahead and just go.
Yeah.
And they switched it and they did fantastic. And the guy was an engineer, Mike, you'd appreciate this. With the proto throttle, he was switching the lights from dim to bright to off, depending on which way the engine was going. Hardly anybody does that. Hardly anybody.
I do that all the time.
You got it with the proto throttle, but he had just worked the night before. He'd worked the shift before, and he was just like, it was like he was back in the cab. I mean, with the proto throttle, it doesn't really take that much to make you feel like you're sitting in the seat. And it was so enjoyable for them to just operate the layout. And I just stood back and watched them, and they were calling out car counts and doing everything. I didn't have to tell them anything. They got it basically. So
somebody asked me a question about how long I had my Proto Throttle. I think I've had mine for maybe a couple of years now. I can't remember. Yeah. Tom, you helped me.
Yeah, it was about 3 years, maybe
about
3
years. Yeah. I mean, I've never had an issue with it. It's a game changer. I'm telling you, it just makes operating so much fun. I've never had problems with it. It's easy to learn how to use it too. It's not that hard. But you were calling out some people there, Tom. I see one of our listeners is Tim Moran.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Tim. I got a shout out to Tim because my friend Jim Six has had some health issues over the years, and he does that little piece in MRH magazine, The Limited Modeler, I believe. Yeah. And he struggled getting his layout started and all that stuff. I mean, I think he's 77 now or whatever. So he's not a young pup anymore, but Tim is driving like an hour away to Jim's house in Ohio and helped him do all of his bench work and is now helping him lay track. I mean, he's been a godsend to Jim. I mean, Jim is really getting fired up now and enthused, and I just wanted to give him a shout out here among everybody that might know him, because he is really, really hi Tim. And Lance Midheim is a real good friend of mine. We talk a lot, and I'm gonna, I could mention a lot of names here. I'm always afraid to leave people out, but I'm going to mention one person here that you guys need to get on the podcast sometime, because he's got a small shelf layout too. It's an L shape. It's based off of Rob Chant. A lot of Rob Chant layouts are really cool, but his name is Robert Mountainay, and we call him Robin, that know him really well. He models the Barchester branch of the Pennsylvania Railroad, I believe in, I'm sorry, Robin, if you're listening, but it's probably like 40 somewhere in there. He models steam. And He has these really tiny steam engines that are just awesome. But his layout, the scenery, I see pictures of it. You can Google Barchester branch, or he's got a blog on MRH. The photos are amazing, but he would be a fun guy for you guys to have on and talk to. So he's a retired pastor. He used to be a pastor of a Lutheran church, I believe it was, and now he's got a lot of free time because of being a minister, pastor, priest, or whatever. It really requires a lot of your time. So, anyways, he's a good guy to check out.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Well, that's one of the things, Tom, that's great about this hobby is the fantastic people that you meet. From people that we've met online, guys that I've met online. There's one guy that commented earlier, Alejandro. He's in South America. He talks with us. I mean, it's an international hobby. I've talked with people from Germany and all kinds of stuff. And that to me is probably the best thing about the hobby. Running trains is fun, building layouts is fun, but it's the people that you meet and become lifelong friends that really make this a fantastic hobby. I mean, I've got such great friends from just reaching out a little bit and getting outside my little shell here of building a layout, and without that I wouldn't have met these really great people.
So I think there's a couple questions. I'm gonna get the lightning round going here for the people in the section crew to get a few questions on here. So Dave Nitch said, curious, Tom Johnson, what's the height again on your
60 inches.
60 inches.
Yes.
Mike's got the tape measure out.
Yeah.
Yep. Mike, what are you at there? I think mine's at 54.
50, mine's at 57 and a half.
Yep. And Tom Clamoski, yours is at
54.
54.
Same as you, Andy.
Yeah. So I think
you could see where I am when I stand by.
Hold on a sec here.
Yeah, see, you can see where I am when I stand by, or where my head is from the top of the layout.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. So you can kind of get that, almost like that trackside view almost.
Yeah,
which is
you're still looking down on it a little bit. But yeah.
So I guess
there was also regarding that, Andy. There was a question earlier about whether or not the layouts are for a good height for photographing and seeing like the details with the naked eye or something. It was a rather long question. I can't remember who had it.
Well, I got another one here from Jay asking, and I think could go to both of you guys. So Tom Johnson first. What's the depth of your shelf scenes?
Okay, the main part of it, you remember the U-shaped part of it that you saw the very first plan, 16 inches, 16 inches deep. The additions that I made back here are about 8 inches. The staging is 8 inches. The little piece over the door that I duck under is 8 inches. Everything else is 16 inches.
Oh,
I was able to take one sheet of plywood at Home Depot and rip that thing up 3 times, and I had everything I needed. just get some 1x4s, and there you go.
That was it. So Tom Clamoski, now what's the depth of your bench work then?
The side walls are 18. The peninsula is 18, and then the bridge scene, which is on we'll call it the top wall, is 14 inches deep. And then the bridge scene that's at the bottom of that U where the peninsula comes out goes back to 14 inches. So 18 and 14.
Mike, what's yours? Yours isn't very deep either, is it?
No, mine's 18 inches.
Yeah, 18
just a
inches.
Straight. I just went with a straight 18 inches, just for kind of uniformity.
Yeah,
just to keep it simple.
I got 12 here, 12 inches here, and then this weird corner thing back there, but another 12 inches behind me.
When I had my S scale layout in the same area, it was 12 inches.
Yeah,
and that was a little bit too shallow for that scale.
So I think I have a question, and this is for both of you, Toms, as well. So if you were to give someone some advice, so we had Jeremy Sir and Jimmy Brannon on a couple shows ago, and they started doing the dioramas, right? And they were modeling, doing dioramas. Then we had Ken McCory on, right? And he's got this massive 4-decked, in a barn dedicated space. But let's say, what advice would you give a room size shelf layout modeler who's just starting out? And maybe we'll start with Tom Klamoski. If you got this extra room, what am I going to do with it? What would be the advice that you would give them to essentially start the railroad?
Start off and keep it simple.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Don't try to jam too much track in. As you can see from Tom Johnson's layout, very simple track plan and a lot of fun to operate. So, don't succumb to I got to put everything in. I'm going to try to get everything in and build something simple. Start off simple. Don't build Ken's layout unless you've got the resources and the money and the time and everything else.
Yeah.
Keep it small, learn from there and develop your skills, and then you'll move along to, the next step. This isn't maybe going to be your only layout. This will be a learning layout. If you haven't built a layout before, start off small, learn on that layout, and then when it comes time, take it down and start something else.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Tom? Tom Johnson,
well,
TJ, Elvis.
I like the KISS method.
Yeah.
Now, and Jim Six's sake, we always told Jim Six, you need to keep it simple. 6.
Yeah, there you go.
But we know what KISS actually means.
Yeah.
I first of all, I think some people try to bite off more than they can handle. I think age has a lot to do with it. If you're younger and you think you could foresee a future of finishing a large layout, fine, go for it, But when you're getting up there in years a little bit, or you're getting close to retirement, you have to stop and think about, am I going to be able to maintain this thing? Am I going to be able to take care of this, into my 80s? My wiring underneath this layout is so simple a caveman can do it. Okay.
I see two wires.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a bus wire run the whole thing. I've got feeders going up. I don't need any more than that. I don't need blocks. I don't need anything else. It's just a one-town operation. I don't ever have to worry about, well, this guy got a short. Where is that short? I don't have a problem with short.
Right.
I'll never have one the way my layout's set up. I kept it narrow, because the more narrow your layout is, the less scenery you have to deal with.
It's true.
And I like the 16 to 18. There's not a lot of, you're only talking about 2 inches. Okay. 16 is good. 18 is good. I think anything up to 20, 24, that's too wide for me. So you want to keep it simple like that. You want to be able to reach in, uncouple cars, throw switches. And then the biggest thing, like I said, with a small layout like this is maintenance. I use let me get this, because some people are always asking me about this.
He's gone.
I use
magic.
I use this Mr. Clean Magic Eraser.
Oh,
and you
yes.
can see this. You could see, I mean, I've gone over my layout several times with this, and you could see that's all the black streak I have on there, because it just keeps the track really clean. And I like dry. I don't like to have oils or anything on my track. And I just use a long handled screwdriver and a piece of double stick tape on top, and I just run this over my rails. I'm kind of obsessed with this, but I don't need to, especially since I have Keep Alive in all my locomotives now, and I use those new Pico switches that have the solid point rails where you don't have any electrical problems going through the switches anymore.
Right.
But I probably do this about once a week, maybe twice a week, and it only takes me 10 minutes at the most to run this magic eraser, just one single swipe, and it picks up that little bit of white dust that might gather on top of the track. So I can take my finger, run along the track, and look at my finger, and I can see just a little teeny tiny bit of white, but no black, nothing.
Yeah.
And so it keeps it dusted off. It's real easy, real fast. I could vacuum my layout. Somebody, I think, had a question in there about that.
Cleaning your scenery. Yeah.
Yeah. I use a real fuzzy brush. I use one of these, really soft, and I just brush off all my rooftops and everything. But I could also wet it down just a little bit with some soap and water, believe it or not. And I'll go through and I'll just start swiping it over the top of all of my scenery, my grass, the tops of my trees that tend to gather dust, and I could do that and not harm anything.
Yeah.
I could take the sweeper over everything, no issues. A little bit of dust is good. Let's face it; it's natural weathering. I mean,
yeah, right.
It tends to not show as much on fall foliage.
That's true.
That's another good point.
It shows a little bit more on green summer foliage. Maybe after a while, you'll start to see the green turning a little bit more of a lighter color or white on top. But I just go through and brush them off with this and just whisk over it real fast and real lightly, no problem. I have a real little tiny brush that I go through and dust off details like my automobiles, the tops of all my details, like my pop machines and all the stuff in front of the grocery store. I could do all of that in 10 minutes or less. It doesn't take me any time to do anything. I mean, so it's going to be easy to run this layout, to keep it clean and whatever, as I'm approaching my later 70s. I'm 74 right now. And
you still wiggle pretty good for 74.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And it's something else I wanted to talk about. Andy, it looks like that your layout is lower.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That is not a bad thing. Okay. If you're older, sometimes I encourage people, build your bench work lower. And I probably should have done the same thing with mine, because you never know what happens if I get into my 80s and for some reason I'm in a wheelchair, or
Mhm.
I can't operate this thing from a wheelchair. But if it was here, like this table, that's right here in
Yep.
front of me, okay, I could operate it easily. And I thought about building an L-shaped layout on this table underneath all of this, for just something to do, like Tom Klimoski's, something to build, get
Right.
your juices flowing again, and have something at a lower level to operate. But I put it off so far. I've got a couple friends that are trying to talk me into building something in N scale. And I've got a box full, believe it or not, I have a box full of micro trains, covered hoppers, factory weathered. It's all of their special factory weathered cars. And those weathered cars are phenomenal. I mean, they're just amazing. And I was just collecting them for a while, thinking maybe I will. I thought it would be neat to build one of these elevators at N scale because it's smaller and more manageable, but I don't know. I'm happy with what I have. I need to just stay with that and go with the flow. If something happens, I'll change something down the road. Maybe I'll build a higher floor.
There you go. Oh, so there was one other question here that I wanted to just get at you, Tom Johnson. Because Tom Klamoski's answering his in the chat. The question came in: what do you guys do? What is your preferred method for operations? Do you have like car cards, switch list? Just pick a car and run it. What do you guys do?
Well, everything from my layout's in my head because it's small enough. I know what I'm going to do ahead of time. I don't need a switch list, but I will come up with a switch list because if somebody else is here operating with me, I feel like a switch list. I mean, it would be nice to have one. Tom didn't need one. I mean, I pretty much told him where the cars were going, and we didn't use one. But when I'm operating alone, I don't need no switch list. I just do my
You don't
thing.
need no stinking switch list.
Switch list.
Yeah, I don't. Car cards are great. I used to use them a little bit back in Indiana, and I'm not going to badmouth car cards. I think they're cool, but for what I'm doing, I just don't need them. I know that some of the covered hoppers that I saw, some of the short lines back in Indiana, I mean, they weren't set out and then just picked up automatically in 3 days. You have your car cards in slot 1, slot 2, slot 3. Set out, hold, pick up. Some of those cars would sit at those elevators for over a week. And especially the ones with fertilizer, they'd spot them there and they would be there for days. They would the Fulton County Railroad would bring down a string of like 40 covered hoppers from Argus to Rochester, Indiana, at the Wilson's grain elevator at the time, and they would set them in there, and they would be there for 3-4 days before they actually pulled them out and took them back to Argus. I know some people go, well, how can the railroad be making money if the cars aren't moving on and on? I don't know the answers to that. I don't know all that stuff, but I just know what I see. And I saw them sitting there for days. So when I spot hoppers on my layout, I won't pick them up for 2 or 3 days sometimes. I've got a tank car up here that I had full of liquid fertilizer that I spotted, and it's been there now for like 4 days. I haven't moved it yet. but others I'll pick up it in the next day or 2 days later.
That's actually, here's the thing about doing that, Tom, is the fact that that's about as realistic a practice as you're going to get, because like on the job that I actually work right now, we'll take a car out to Rockwood to the Limehouse. Like we went on Tuesday. We haven't been back out there this week. We won't go there tomorrow. We'll be back there maybe next week. We'll go there 1 day a week.
Yeah.
Maybe in the off chance they have 2 loads to come out. But for the most part, that's it. We have a plastics plant right next to our yard. You put a car in there, they right now I think there's 5 cars in there. I know for a fact there's 1 empty. It's not built out yet. They've got 1 coming in. It might be Tuesday of next week before we go in there. And we hadn't been in there. That'll been 10 days since we've been in there. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the fertilizer company that I was talking about, I talked to one of the guys there, and his comment was, we've got 3 covered hoppers out there loaded with fertilizer. He says, we don't really have any place to put it inside the building right now. He says, we just leave it sit in the hoppers because it stores it for us. We just unload it when we need it.
Yep.
The railroad is,
No, the brilliant and Forest Junction Railroad is long defunct back in 1984. But at the very end of their railroad, at the eastern end of their railroad, was a spot. You could put 2 covered hoppers at the end of this road. Like there was, you had a grade crossing and then room for 2 covered hoppers. And farmers would literally pull up to that car and unload those cars. The cars were being brought in by a cooperative of like a local cooperative of farmers in the area. And they would order this car in of fertilizer and just go and grab what they needed. As it was 2 weeks. Sometimes those cars sat there, and that was in the 80s, So, and the other thing is when people ask about how railroads make money doing stuff like that, you have to remember one thing: not everybody is a class 1 railroad.
right.
Small short line railroads typically operate maybe 3 days a week. They typically don't have the fuel costs. They don't have the labor costs. They may have a little bit of a different type of switching setup for like money monetarily wise. And a lot of times these railroads are owned by industries on the line specifically. So, there's that. I remember when I went to Missouri, that Colt Railroad, those guys have a little bit of industry, but the stuff that they do is high dollar stuff, the things that they're unloading, So I think it all depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you know what I mean? I'm just looking at it from a 1-to-1 aspect. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
No, it's good points. So I guess Mike, as we're getting ready to tie down here for tonight, I'm going to do the awkward toss over to you. What did you think of this show tonight?
Yeah, well, it's all right.
So right?
So. I mean,
I thought it was
honestly,
spectacular.
You guys are boring. I mean, come on. How much awesome scenery do you have? I mean, there's all those pictures.
It took me the last 2.5 hours, 2 hours or so to get out of this stupid chair that I can't sit still in. I'm always dropping around. I can't sit still. I got to use my hands when I talk.
Honestly, though, as usual, you guys are amazing. Both of you are absolutely incredible at what you're doing. Tom Clamoski, I can't wait to see this new iteration of your layout. I think that's going to be absolutely phenomenal. And I think the cool part about what you're doing is the fact that we've talked about it a lot lately, haven't we, Andy? To where you're building it for you. You're not building it for 25 people to come over and take a look at. You're building it for you. Tom Johnson, the same thing. You built your layout for you, not for 60 people to come over and rifle through it and everything.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, it's a masterclass in scenery tonight is what that was too. I mean, that was absolutely, we could have just shown one picture and spent hours on one photo.
Well, what with the Coke bottles just strewn across the landscape? You're like, and then Tom picking them off with the mouse arrow. And
Tom did a good job. I mean,
he was awesome.
Well, the technical side. The hollow technical sign. I can pinpoint where about 5 of those things are in Wisconsin right now that look almost identical to that. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, the Texaco sign, the old gas station sign that we have those. They're littered around Wisconsin all over the place. And it's just phenomenal when you see somebody model something like that. It kind of takes you back to when you were younger. Now, the worst thing about having both of you guys on here at the same time, okay, here's the biggest downfall is now I'm going to go to work tomorrow and I'm going to be looking at everything but what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm going to be sitting there going, wow, if I did that, I should get a picture of this. This is a good picture. I should do that, and on the drive home will be the same thing. Even though it's on an interstate, I'll be rubbernecking all the countryside. So it's, but I just want to say, you guys are amazing at what you're doing. You're amazing people, and even better modelers. And I just thank you very much for coming on. And I hope everybody in the section crew really enjoyed it, because this is where the upper tier begins, guys. This is it.
And these guys are always forthcoming and to share information to help us grow as a community and make us all better modelers. So I think it was an amazing content from Tom. I love how you're pivoting to the Southern. I just love that. I have if I were to pick aside from the Chicago Northwestern, an 80s railroad to model, it'd be the Southern with the tuxedo paint scheme and Saluda Hill or Saluda grade and all that good stuff. So
yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And Tom Johnson, I just, we've been following you for a while, and you're just a wealth of knowledge. So I can't thank both of you enough for coming on tonight. We got some admin stuff that we got to talk here before we adjourn for tonight. So this is another camera that we hooked up here. Next show is we're going to do basically a live demo on detailing your track work. So this is
good. Looks good.
My layout here, so you can see, we can pan and look. There's the Mascoutin Valley with the Home Shops SD38-2 there in the background. We're sitting at Pine River Junction, but we're going to be looking at how do we get the detail and the weathering in the track, some really easy techniques that you can apply. Mike's got a short line of the show that borderlines on its own episode. It's going to be so good. So I think from that standpoint, it's going to be a fantastic show, and that's going to be January 22nd. So we're going to be back and at that time. Tom Clamoski is out on YouTube. I have his channel in the show notes. Tom Johnson is on Facebook, again in the show notes. I'm hoping Tom Clamoski is going to post a few videos of the progress on YouTube. That's what I'm really hoping for. So make sure it's time to take or make sure to tune into Tom's channel. And then, yes, Tom Johnson, you wanted to jump in.
I get that question a lot. Do you have a YouTube channel? I don't. I've had some problems uploading things to YouTube before and doing videos. My daughter has an awesome camera. It's a video camera. She takes it to Disney with her all the time. Mm-hmm. She's going to come over here and she's going to videotape an entire operating session. Then she's going to edit it, you can phase in and out different things, and I'm going to try to get something going on YouTube with that. She does a lot with her mini ear collection. She has the world's largest mini ear collection, by the way. She was on ABC Good Morning America when Disney was celebrating their 50th anniversary, talking about her mini ear collection. She's got well over 1,000 of them.
The little hats. The little
hats? Yeah, but they're special. There are a lot of them from all over the world. She gets them from Japan, from Europe, different places, and she trades and swaps with people, and they like a lot of the things that she buys, down here in Florida at Disney World. So, she's taking that camera with her everywhere, and she does such an awesome job with it. So I hope to get something up on YouTube sometime. But other than that, it's just my Tom Johnson's Cass County Railroad Facebook page or my MRH blog, which is Cass County. So and it's got all my old photos from my LNIN back in Indiana too. It's got everything. And a friend of mine that I used to model with up in Indiana, Quentin Sheeny, has a little bit of. I've got some of his stuff on my my MRH blog too. He's very good modeler, very good modeler. So
that's outstanding. So a couple spots we can still find you then.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let you know, or I'll make a post or something if I have some YouTube stuff coming up, and
that would be sweet.
From there.
Certainly looking forward to that. Well, I guess thank you to the section crew tonight for joining us, and
big
strong section crew tonight. Up to
we
200.
We
hit 200 tonight in the stream, and a lot of good questions, a lot of good content, comments, I should say. Thank you guys for being there tonight with us. And again, Tom, thank you so much. It's always so much fun having you guys on. And this has been a lot of fun. This week's been a great week, and I love the conversation. So anything else before we want to close up shop here, Tom?
I have just one quick question. I was scrolling through a lot of the comments. How do I answer those? I'm going to minimize this. I do this. I'd like to see they're all on the right hand side there. Will I be able to go back and answer these later, or
you can if you want to in the on the YouTube video itself. Otherwise, for the next show, what you can have is you can log into YouTube in a separate browser window, and then you just have that on mute over in the corner. And then when they come up, like Tom was doing tonight, he had his up and he was responding to comments, so we can get you get you on the next show. We can hook you up with the I mean, we mastered the screen share tonight. Right, we mastered that. We mastered that thanks to Tom Clamoski's handiwork. The next bit of tech that we'll add in for you, Tom, is the two screens and the commenting. So
I'm not a multitasker, so I was listening and watching and I was reading the comments, but I'm sitting there going, okay, how do I answer these and and then I'm trying to watch what's going on, what Tom's saying and all. Of course, when I'm presenting mine, there's just no way I could do that. But so anyways, okay, that gives me an idea. I think we answered a lot of them. I went through and I think we talked about many of them, but I know there was 2 or 3 of them in here that I need to try to answer. So thank you for that.
No, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you guys again. So we're gonna, if you haven't, check out the description of the show tonight. I'll have the links to where you can find Tom and Tom out in the social media world. And then we're also out on social media as well. We have a Facebook group, the Second Section Podcast Crew Lounge.
Yep.
Come on and join that. A lot of good model railroad content being discussed there, giving away tips and techniques and helping each other out with problems. Also just sharing all of the good modeling that you guys are doing. So I think from there, I don't know, Mike, but what do we always say at the Second Section when life tries to let the smoke out of your decoder?
Just keep on modeling.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.